How are we going?
Very good, my friend. My family,
That's it.
Friend and family.
We should probably just start out by saying it. We actually known each other for quite some time now.
We sure have.
So
how long is it?
Well, that'd be. Well, I met Ash about 10 years, just over 10 years ago. So we would probably have known each other for a little less.
Yeah. Very good.
Good stuff, man.
Ash, obviously being my sister.
That is.
And
yeah.
You're married to her.
That's all those unisex names and all that stuff. She's actually as same as your last name. That's how the whole Helhammer came up. You know, the abbreviation of Helper and Hanham. So a lot of people are asking about that. Oh, it's such a weird last name, a cool last name, but yeah, man, it's made up. So
they're all made up, mate. At the end of the day, someone made them up at some point.
I know. It's good, man. How have you been anyway? And thanks so much for taking your time out. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, really good. Really good. Just, like yourself, I've got a young family as well, and somewhere between work and family and all that, you find some time to sleep from here and there, and that's life. So loving life, enjoying my work and enjoying a young family. So that's it. Fantastic, man.
No, it's awesome. It's awesome to have you on, man. I'm really looking forward to sort of getting some of your inputs. And sort of trying to maybe sort of break down a couple of the stigmas that is about the whole thing about having a business and being in a band and trying to sort of treat that in a slightly different way these days.
Yeah, definitely. I'm keen for the chat as someone that picks up an instrument from time to time, and certainly did a lot more in my past. It's kind of exciting to fuse the two things together, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But I'm looking forward to where this could go and how it could help people, really, because I think it's about changing your lens, right, and looking at it a little differently, even though it's the thing you love to do. There's another way to make it successful.
Absolutely. And that's, I think that's what quite a few people sort of are a little bit unaware of, like how to do, because it's such an overwhelming process to try and do something that you aren't too familiar with. Like any of us, something that's, the unknown is dangerous. But I suppose
it's dangerous.
No, but it's it's the whole thing. Like, you got to throw yourself out and do something you're not comfortable with. It's sort of same as you pick up a new trade, or if you got to start a new job or something, a new industry. It's same thing but different. I suppose just before we get started, maybe if you wanted to just do just a quick little introduction to yourself and just say what you've been doing for the last. You've been doing quite a few things over the last sort of 10 or so years.
Yeah, well, the last 10 or so years, I might go back 20 because that's probably easiest. About 20 years I finished up school, and scarily it's been that long. But yeah, about 20 years or so. And at that point in time, I was playing music and I was doing things like that and trying to drop out of university over and over again. Kept getting nudged back in by my dad in particular. Grateful that I finished that and finished a degree in accounting and finance, and I sort of did that for a few years, and it was a great job. It was the type of thing that was, I guess, exciting in one standpoint, and you're putting nice suits on, and you're on the sort of main terraces in Perth where we both live, and it sort of got a bit empty, and I got into my mid sort of 20s and realised that things weren't going too well, and not that it wasn't going too well. They were going really well, but it wasn't sort of fulfilling. And I ended up getting really, really sick. And I was actually pretty crook for nearly sort of 18 months to 2 years. And that led me to, make decisions that, look, it's time to go and do my own thing. So I'm going to start a business, but I don't even know what business to start or why or where do I go. And I sort of I didn't pack up my things, but I got myself organized. I got some money in the bank and just left my job and made a decision to start some businesses. So ever since then, I've sort of started, I think, 5 different businesses that really revolved around a few different sort of, I guess, legal entities. And I've been involved in like construction, property development, and the most recently, the last 6 or 7 years have been digital marketing and marketing. And I guess why I sort of tell the whole story is because I started these businesses, and it was just like when I had a band way back in the day, and we're like, how do we promote ourselves? Like, what do we do? We had a website with a little counter on it, which was really cool, and we'd log in all the time and try and get our counts up just by logging ourselves in.
But I remember those.
You remember that? Yeah. So the reality was, like, you had to grow these businesses, and whatever, it didn't matter what it was. You had to grow it. So I got involved in digital marketing because I saw that as the future, and it sort of is the future. It's now the present. In some ways, it's the past, but it's still the future. So it's about like leveraging all this technology that we have. Like right now I'm surrounded by microphone, phone, laptop, webcams, stuff behind me. But in reality, most of this is what everybody has. So they're tools that we have access to. And the idea was, how do I, if I'm going to grow any business or anything, which really does revolve around, having self-control, right? And so controlling a business is no different to wanting to, move overseas and live off a little bit of money and be in control of that and work and play. And, same as a band who is dying to like make enough money so they can just have freedom, because at the end of the day, we're all actually seeking freedom, in one way, shape or form. So to get freedom, I saw that learning these skills online was really the only real way to get there without having to pay, huge amounts of money to people to learn, which I did anyway. You end up spending and investing, but, learning some skills that you can manage yourself was really the answer. And I've been doing this for 7 years and helping people, grow their businesses. And we've got a team here based in Perth, and we have a lot of fun, and we get to podcast and help grow people's businesses. And I sort of created the studio that I always wanted, when I was more of a musician, but now I just talk on microphones and talk about business. So it's kind of interesting how things develop. But I guess that's my couple of minute, in a nutshell, spiel of what I've done the last 2 decades.
Yeah. Fantastic. But sort of over the different businesses that you've had in the past, like what's sort of the overall sort of mindset you need to have sort of going into that? Because as you said yourself, like you threw yourself out on the deep end, like knowing, okay, I might not fit in the whole, suit and tie and work at a fancy office in the city. But not exactly knowing what you want, but having that courage almost to actually throw yourself out there and get started. What sort of, like, how does that mindset develop?
Oh, look, I think there's a couple of ways to develop that mindset. The way that happened for me and the way I got to that point was me really hitting relatively close to a rock bottom in some ways, or at least one sort of bottom. There is other things that can certainly happen, but it got to a point where the path of least resistance was actually easier to leave at that point. Like I'd gone through 18 months of incredible fatigue, being like really unwell, and helped build myself up to a point that it was like, well, if I've dealt with that, it's pretty easy to leave my job and have a go at something and always find another one. So I don't know that that's the path you definitely want to take, is to find that rock bottom. But for me, it sort of took getting, having a period of time where it was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think on some level, everyone's always there. Like we've always got something, whether it's a job or, a hobby or something, where we're like, look, I love this. I love the idea of this maybe, but I don't want to do this way anymore. And so that's why I think there's other ways you can get there. But for me, it was sort of hitting a rock bottom, and just choosing that there was, I guess, as Tony Robbins would say, burn the boats. And I'm an accountant, as my sort of core initiative. So I burned the boats, but I made sure I had enough to get me through. Yep. Others might literally just burn the boats, but I gave myself a window of at least a year. And I was fortunate enough to be able to put myself in that position that I had, like, look, I can eat for a year. So if something goes horribly wrong, there's another job that I can find in a year.
Yeah. And probably just for people sort of wondering about the whole burn the boats thing. It's the whole thing about you sail over somewhere, you set it on fire, you can't go back.
You can't go back.
You just got to do something. Got to make it work.
We often sort of straddle the two things, right? And that's the concept of burning the boats. It's just you don't see that there's a real future in where you are, so you need to make a drastic decision that you can't stay on A and you can't stay on B. You've got to move forward. So I think the way it actually the correct metaphor is put together is I think you burn the boat and swim to the island. I think that's the way you do it, because then you can't go back. And I guess it's an old Viking and other story where you inspire your guys to get out there and there is no way back. So you got to go take the town.
Yeah. You got to make it work somehow.
That's it.
But I suppose as well, like a lot of the people that I've been speaking with over the last couple of months, it seems like a lot of musicians in general, would love to actually live off, doing their music full time. Yeah. But again, it's one of those things where it's almost like I want to say like the current model is flawed, because it is pretty close to impossible to make it if you are sort of only relying on your gigs and only relying on being there physically. And like not only just because of the current situation with COVID and all that stuff, but actually sort of trying to also build your image online, same as you've done, same as you've helped a lot of other businesses do. So for it's like one of the big discussions we have is like how should you do it? How should you focus on social media? Should you have a website? Should you aim to have, should you do a podcast? Should you what sort of avenues are out there? And so that's why it would be really curious to sort of get your feedback to sort of how you help businesses develop. And then for now, let's just assume businesses is not a band, but just let's go with some of the businesses that you work with and then try and come back and try and draw some references to the music industry.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the start of all of it really is the age-old sort of quote: "If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten," and that rings true here as well. And we're in a really cool time. We're in a really interesting place in technology where there's all this transition, yet in many ways, most industries, and whether I'm talking about the cleaning industry or a not-for-profit or a building company or a band or a podcaster, most of them still happen relatively, I guess, analog, for want of a better way. Like they still have a lot of elements of I won't say old school, but just traditional, just ways things have always been done. And it just opens up so much opportunity to go and do something different. Whereas if you jump out and you just think you're going to come and be the next best version of the same thing, you're just going to get stuck. It doesn't help you become different. So, I mean, a great example is Blank Canvas Studios, which is a good mate of mine who owns that business, and they do the highly graphical 3D renders of brand new big towered buildings, and so they have amazing high quality imagery. Yet no one in that industry had actually bothered to invest in building up an Instagram profile where people can look at their work. They've now got 50, 60,000 people on their Instagram. They put something up, thousands of people like it instantly from around the world. And that's just one example of where you've got this amazing quality visual content that you actually produce and clients pay you for, yet they won't, most of the industry doesn't even bother to use it and put it onto a platform where they can excel. And I find that bands are very similar. They have some great content, but it's only one form of content. It's their songs, their music, but there's so much more that they can do, especially with the average small business owner, right, to draw an interesting parody, would only dream of having the equipment that a band has surrounding them at all times to create something. I mean, they've got it's everything that most small business owners are currently buying, just cheap mics and small mixers, to different things, to podcast and create video. And I know video is not necessarily a core piece of equipment for a band, but bands have the gear and they know how to use it. I mean, they've got they're halfway there in terms of being able to manage their own production of almost anything, and that's what's really, I think, interesting as well. And so basically, we're at a time where there's rapid change. It's very accessible with a lot of equipment that we have around us, and also the software and social profiles. And really, if you want it, and that's a big thing, if you want it truly, there isn't really anything stopping you from developing, your core audience of people. And there's a great quote by there's a concept by a guy called Kevin Kelly, and it's 1,000 true fans. And
yeah, I've got that. I already have that written down. I'd love to get into that.
All right. Well, we'll get to it now. But your 1,000 true fans, and the way the structure goes, I think it must be, I forget whatever the multiples are, but basically, if you can get 1,000 people to pay you $100 a year, which like $100 a year. So for any band, even gigging just locally, like let's say you do just $25 on the door, and you get you get these people to give you $25 4 times a year, like once a quarter. There's 1,000 people giving you $25 once a quarter is enough money to live off. So we don't even usually have that amount. We don't have a target number that we need to make it sustainable. But the reality is that it's pretty close. And if you have your 1,000 odd core people, and 1,000's not a tiny number, but it's not that difficult if you think about it the right way. If you develop 1,000 core people, they'll tell you whether or not your new stuff's any good or whether they like it. They'll be your biggest fans. They'll share for you on social media. They'll do all these things for you. And if they're a fan, as if they're not going to spend $100 with you a year. New album comes out, you ask them to buy, or ask them to pay for it, or ask them for a Patreon contribution, or you sell them a shirt for $50 because they want to support you and give you a bit of extra money. Whatever it is, there's a lot of ways that you can, I guess, monetize up to $100, which is really just pocket money that people are spending every weekend anyway. So the concept is that you can get your 1,000 true fans, then basically you've got at least a monetizable, structure, band, business, whatever that is, where you can start to develop further from there. But that is really who you need to focus on, just that core group of people, rather than trying to go and get to everyone immediately. It's not necessary, and it's not efficient.
But then again, I suppose like the first question would be like, how do you create content to actually get that first, the actual true fans? Because like you hear from a lot of people as well that we musicians, like we focus on playing music, like we don't know, like we're not salespeople, we are not marketing people. So how do we do that? How do we actually create something that people would want to pay for? Which is, again, it's another massive thing. Like you have bands that go in, they would spend, out of their own pockets, like actually throw money into their own pockets, go into a studio, spend $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 on creating an EP, an album that straight away is gonna be something you're gonna give away, because like people first of all aren't really buying physical copies anymore. Maybe vinyl, vinyls are coming back. Or it's something where you need like so many streams for you to make that like tiny amount back. So for them to actually be able to make something, they need other avenues, and some people mention, we need, you can sell merchandise, or if you have enough following, as you mentioned your friend's company who had like 50, 60,000 followers, in that case, you might be able to get some influencer payments through other channels there. But how do you build up content to actually start getting true fans to follow you and who actually wants to pay you?
Yeah, so I mean, there's probably 5 to 7 questions in there.
At least
5 to 7 answers at least.
I was just thinking out loud. So.
Yeah, no. What I'm saying is there's so many different things. I mean, one of the first things that is really important is you have to have a product. And that might sound ridiculous, but you could have thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that love your stuff. if you haven't got a way for them to buy something from you, then how are they going to give you any money? So let's say you put all this effort in and you built up these social platforms and profiles, and you're doing amazing in Europe. And all these people in Europe really enjoyed your sound and they thought it was fantastic. They loved the new track, but you're gigging in, let's say, Melbourne, Australia, 3 times a month. Okay. So where are you making your money? Well, there's 7 people turning up to the shows, because you're doing it 3 times a month and you're really accessible, as accessible as the next, the cover band who's, like the Friday night regular, right? So you're there all the time, and people might enjoy you, but all these people online think you're awesome and you're in Europe. You've got nothing for them to, or no way for them to give you money. So, I mean, for a band, it can be as simple as using like Patreon. So Patreon is a platform where people can basically give you either recurring or I think one-off, just like donations. Yep. Effectively, they're donations. They're basically saying like, we love what you're doing. We support the fact that you're creating content. We'll give you some money, or you just find other ways to package things up. Merch is one way, exclusive membership, or and what you tend to do is give these guys something more. So your 1,000 true fans are going to want something on the inside. So they're going to want something that's not available to everyone else because they're your core fan and they want to feel that way. So, I mean, to put it into context, I love learning, and I follow a lot of great people and I buy online courses and do different things. And there's certain people that, with their free stuff that they put out, when they bring a product out, I'll just buy it. And if that's $500 or whatever it is, I'll just buy it because they've already given me so much value. But if they didn't put that product out, like I sometimes will buy that product and I'm like, yeah, these guys could have done better, or look, their free stuff was actually as good, if not better. But I'm not upset because they've given me value already, so I'm quite happy to pay for them. So to circle it back, first thing first is you really need to have a way that people can give you money, a way that they can do it that way. You have to actually ask your fans for money, not like, oh, well, if we get 300 million followers on YouTube, then YouTube will give us money for the views. Like, don't think of it that way. Yep. Think of getting your fans. Like you mentioned Instagram before or influencers. It's not the way you're going to get. You're not going to get money from being an influencer necessarily. And I'd argue from a band's perspective, it's probably the last thing they want to do. 100%. Hey, buy these strings. Yeah, I like yogurt. And you might get $500 for doing that. What's the point? So that you're looking at you're looking at the easy option. Even though your easy option really is going to your friends. Yep. Starts with your family, starts with your friends. Who are the people that are helping you get to the gig, setting up your gear, doing the stuff? Like there's always at least 10, 20 people in that bracket. Then there's another bracket. And then it doesn't take long to get to 1,000. Give them a way to give you money, to give you money, not because they're giving it to you out of charity, but because you've added some value in their lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think you're actually spot on saying everything about the whole product thing, because everybody puts their music up on Spotify and Apple Music and let it sit there. Yeah. And then they go out and play gigs, and some might have some merchandise, people can buy. Otherwise, if you've forgotten it, you're literally just out there playing some music and you go home. And again, there's no product, there's no incentive, there's nothing, as you said, to have a transaction.
Even Spotify, right? I mean, so what? So you put it on Spotify. How's anyone going to find it? Now, you may get discovered through algorithms and things like that, but it's on you to actually get those 1,000 people there and let that spread. Like, it's just a platform. It's not like the old school way of like you get that single being played by Triple J or a local radio station, and all of a sudden these people are going to hear that. It's not like that anymore, and that's a good thing because you have the opportunity to do it for yourself. Like, you can create an outcome, whereas before it was like, maybe only 5 people this week might get and be a new track play at a particular radio station, and whether you're good, bad, ugly, who knows whether you're going to get that slot. Whereas you can actually control your way in this format. The digital format allows you to build it up from zero, take as long as you want, and sort of not be stuck by the politics, I guess, that come from being the lucky one to make it into, I guess, the rotation on a regular show, and then all of a sudden thousands and thousands of listeners are listening to it, and it becomes, then they look for you on Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I think it's really so powerful about what we've got in our fingertips right now. Yeah.
But so how could bands utilize, say, Instagram or Facebook or some of the other platforms to actively promote, actually market their music or their products?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I haven't fully tested this theory with the exception of like podcasts and things, for example. But I would stand.
We could probably twist it a little bit to say how can a business owner, so say if it's someone else, so say it doesn't have to be a band, say how can someone market their product? Yeah. Because again, like you mentioned before, like you need to find out who's your audience. So that's again one thing. Like who do you actually need to target and all that. Yeah. But if you could sort of run through that perhaps.
Yeah. So I'll hit content, but what I was going to sort of throw a number out there is I was going to say your product, and in this case your actual music, I think is probably 10% of where you need to spend your time. And I think would probably estimate that we'd be looking at maybe 70 or 80% at least. I suppose in the case of a band who's up and coming and trying to make it, they're going to be gigging for, let's say 10% of the time that they invest. And then a big chunk of that is rehearsing and refining and getting organized for that. Whereas the reality is, in this modern world, is you've got the opportunity to do different things and create more content. So I think like behind the scenes activity, and I don't know, social posting isn't natural for everyone. Hey, I love just like Insta storying all the time or whatever. Like I'm not even like that myself, and we do this for a living. So you find ways to make it happen, but there's usually someone in the band, or again, one of your followers, like one of your closest group, like your group of 20 like close people will probably do it. So my view is you would create behind the scenes content, like try out some new material and things, or even just like snippets of a new song that you're working on. These are the types of, I think, content and access that your close followers will want as you build that up. So I would be looking at posting images of lifestyle, obviously like what the band gets up to, what they do, obviously gigging, rehearsing, and video of actually playing at rehearsals, a little bit of a live stream potentially when you're actually at a gig, just even if it's a short clip. You don't necessarily want to sit there and stick it up there for 2 hours, right? That's not the approach. Like it's not all about like crazy long form, although it is one way that you can do it, but just like give them teasers and tastes of other content, and what it's like to be around the band all the time. And I think that's the same goes for business really, is that you want to give them some behind the scenes access so they can understand who you are, your values, what you're about, and that then gives them the opportunity to align with you, because it's not just your song. They might like the song, but they've already taken into it like a huge amount of bias, right? They've already taken into like who told them about it, where was it played, what does it sound like, what genre, there's already so much data that they've brought to the table before they decide whether or not that they kind of like you as a band. And that's what you want to give them. All the other data, not just the track, not just the track. That can be the heart of it. I understand we're talking about musicians. It's your thing. It's your creation, but the creation is the whole lot. The creation is the vibe, the people, how you guys go about your life. I mean, that's all part of, a part of it. And I've just seen, a quick question in there is, what platforms? Well, you can go wherever it makes sense for you, but I would still suggest that Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, if it makes sense for you, depending on who your listeners are and what demographic you are really the places to be, and obviously YouTube and a mixture of those. the really short answer, a mixture of different types of content on those platforms are really the place where I think you would build it up. And if you can afford to go there and you want to start to develop that, you look towards a website and you add the ability to download and get involved in tracks, and you want to look for places to engage with people. So there's a long list of stuff that you can do, but you go to the platforms. I guess the short answer is you go to the platforms as to where your target sort of listening group really sits, and that's a pretty, can be a pretty complex branding process. But in reality, most bands will know who's going to listen to them. Like, what age demographic, what are they into? Do they surf? Do they do this? Like, what are the general, groups of people that become your niche? Because the only way to get to a Metallica, is to start somewhere smaller and gradually go out to the point where you've got the 70-year-old guy and the 20-year-old lady both listening to one band like that and enjoying it. So it takes a long time to go there. It doesn't, and you've got to start with, that close 1,000 fans. That's the easiest approach.
But I suppose again, like so when you mentioned like stories and you basically behind the scene posting and stuff, we're all talking about sort of free posting, like where you actually just are doing it through the platform itself, and you aren't really like you're filming it yourself, you're putting some stuff up. If you are sort of trying to put up, which again a lot of people I think is a little bit sort of daunted by, is the fact when you actually try to put up sponsored ads, when you're putting up like targeted ads and stuff. Is there a couple of easy, sort of baby steps into sort of finding out how to use, say, for instance, Facebook ad manager or Instagram or YouTube?
There is, and there's no, the platforms aren't that difficult. In reality, what challenges people, I think, the most is strategy sometimes. So one of the big problems around where people waste so much money is, say, boosting a post on Facebook. And the reason why so much money gets wasted is because you don't know what you want. Facebook's just popped a little thing up going, hey, why don't you drop $25 on this? Like, we'll get you 400 more people. And you're like, what does that mean? And that's the biggest challenge, because what is 400 people? So there's a marketing term which is a relatively obvious term. What is your call to action? And what if you just drop that ad down? You might have spent $25. It felt good. It was exhilarating to, oh yes. And then like 400 more people are going to hear my track. But are they? Or have they just skimmed past it? Like, what's the content that you've bothered to boost? So is it going to stop them as they're scrolling in the feed? Like, what makes it jump out? Like, what makes you stop and open? Because if you're talking about, let's say, a snippet of a latest track, you've got to get them to unmute it first. I mean, that's the first thing. So they might have consumed it, they might have seen it, but just skimmed straight through it. So that's not 400 people that have listened to your track. That's not even close. It's maybe 5, maybe. It's maybe 20 people that heard a little bit of it, and the rest probably they sort of engaged and rolled through it. So I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying, what are you trying to achieve? So there's several different types of calls to action, and often you want to send someone to a different location. Like, as a band, you might be choosing to build up a mailing list. So you might decide, well, look, if we can build a mailing list every time we're doing something new or gigging over here, I don't have to pay. Like, I don't have to pay to send people a message. I've already got people's Messenger. Or you might choose to do it in Facebook Messenger, because you can use the Facebook Messenger bot, and you can actually utilize software that can build up a list. So you just message someone, and it messages them as a broadcast, as a group. So the best sort of approach to maybe doing ads might be to be spending money on trying to get people to join that group. So, but these are the things you need to try and test. And unfortunately, what happens is they make it very easy for you to effectively just donate Facebook $25. Yeah. and it feels good for a minute. And there's a lot of things. So we do fairly complex, I guess, what we call funnel structures. And when a funnel's a pretty obvious thing, right? And so what we do at the top is we might try and display content that's interesting to a wide group of people. And it might just be something interesting or humorous or just something that gets them to like click into, it might be a bit of music, might be part of a track or something like that. Yep. And then we keep retargeting them down and keep targeting just those people. So the next ad only goes to the people that have bothered to look at that. And we bring them down the funnel until we get them to do what our real call to action is. Ideally, it's product purchase or something like that, or maybe it's just getting you on the list. So it might be buying tickets to an event, which you want them to buy. It might be buying the new EP. It might just be getting on the mailing list, because you might find that investing, say, a couple of $100 or $500 or whatever it is, a week or a month, over time, you build up this list of fans, which you can just, communicate with on demand. But if you just go out there not knowing what you're trying to get them, what action you want them to take,
yep,
you're lost before you start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, like to me, again, like the first time I heard about a funnel, I was like, come again? What's that? How do you put a funnel into a Facebook, and like, how does that work? Yeah. But I think that is the scary part. Like how do I find out how a funnel works? How do I create that content? How do I find out what my call to action is? How do I what is my call to action? It's like all that, because I'm just used to playing a couple of chords and singing a song and all that. But so if people are too scared to do that, or if they don't know anyone who's got to do that, like, would they approach someone like yourself or someone similar?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely they can. But I also think you need to learn a bit of it yourself. You need to at least learn enough to understand how to instruct or engage people to help you. Because if you have no clue what you want, how can anyone help you? So, I mean, we do it for businesses. We do it for, all sorts of different types of businesses and different projects and podcasts and things. But you have to know what you want, right? So it starts with vision, and unfortunately or fortunately, it all starts with knowing what you want first. And that is the thing you can do. You can have those conversations. You can figure it out. You can decide what your end result is. And one really cool tool, for example, on a vision standpoint that I do it with companies, I do it with brands, is I ask them to consider or write their own eulogy. So let's say that you want to be a band for like 20 years, right? Or maybe it's 10 years you reckon you'll be gigging in this band. All right, so fast forward 10 years, someone just shot the band died, metaphorically, the band's over. What was its legacy? What did it do? What did it look like? And I find that that's a really good way that you can get a couple of people to have a quick conversation around what they truly want out of this thing.
Yep.
Because very quickly you're going to work out if you have, one of you might be on a massive stage in front of 80,000, and the other one's still playing at the corner store, at the corner pub, and you're like, hang on a minute, that wasn't the plan. So you start with the end in mind. And that is, I know I'm sort of not digging into like the core of the answers with you, but these are the things that need to be thought of. Otherwise, the answer can change. Like, there's such a wide range of where you go and what you do. But the truth is, you start with vision, and that's the first place, because once you start to break down different steps, and we've got a framework which we've built out, and we're starting to develop these steps because we're trying to get it to more smaller. There's a lot of businesses that can afford to pay us, and there's a lot of businesses that we have identified that we want to help, but we can't really afford to do all the work for them. So we're trying to develop like online courses and programs where they can do things a bit cheaper. But you've got to work through the different steps to get there, because that's the problem, and it starts with V. So we've got this visible framework which we've built out, and V, the starting point is actually the vision of success. So it's what is your vision, and that sort of breaks down into what is the outcome of this whole band, what is your mission, like what are your core values, what are your goals? And these sound funny, right? Because they're not really the things that bands go, yeah, like let's start a band. We've got the same mission, guys. Like you and I, we've got great values. I mean, subconsciously we are doing that a little bit. We're like, yeah, our values align, right? But in reality, we don't sit down and communicate these things and go through like, what do you want? Like we just go, oh, you know, I'm a bass player, you're a guitarist, we like the same music, we both want to play a gig, let's do it. Like you get down, you get excited, and you sort of just get stuck in an oscillating pattern, you know, of doing that because you don't know where you're going. And that's the fun stuff. But so those early conversations are the first thing, is understanding there. And then you can go into the next steps, like investigating your audience, sort of streamlining what the brand and image of the band looks like, you know, igniting and building up content, building out a machine of content from your core pieces of content that you've got, leveraging all the resources you've got at your disposal, and basically extracting the gold, which is we talked about, like having the products there.
Yep.
And a way to get a call to action to get someone from being a no one into your maybe 100,000 and maybe then into your 1,000 sort of core fans, and they're the ones who are going to fund you effectively because they love what you do and they think it's worth giving $100 or whatever the number is out of their own pocket a year for you to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And those people are there.
But I think just coming back to the start of that whole process in regards to actually creating that vision, wouldn't it be sort of safe to say that, you know, if you start a business, like for instance, you're the sole owner and director of your business.
Yeah.
From what I remember, you had a business partner at some stage.
I've had a few.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you aren't 100% on the same page, you know, stuff's gonna get a little bit messy. You're just two. So see, a lot of bands are like 3, 4, 5 people. So if they aren't on the same page, there's going to be a bit of potential issues.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's no different to, you know, a group of business owners in different projects. It's no different to a family deciding on what they should do about something.
Yep.
You know, and it's no different to podcasts, which have multiple guests and things as well. Multiple hosts. Like these, you know, it's no different to a sporting team, although a sporting team has a more direct like goal of what they're trying to achieve. But you still have to organize yourselves, in a way. It's still the conversation that has to happen, and when you work out like how you go about it. So you might have to form some sort of democratic like voting system, you know, if you will, if you've got 4 or 5, and you know, or you have to figure it out. So at the moment you were probably running a strategy, whether it was deliberate or not. You've created some way that decisions get made, and you have to decide if it's working, and also decide if everyone's in the same boat. I mean, I was talking to a guy this morning about a band, and there's a husband and wife that run the band, and they're a cover band, so this is just a commercial operation, right? And they run the band, and they have several session musicians that they just train up and bring in whenever they want. I mean, that's their approach. That's their approach to being able to control it without having to sort of agree with 5, 6, 7 people. The 2 people that have control of the whole lot, and that's just one way to go about it. Others will be very different. So they're all unique, right? I mean, we've all got unique reasons why we're there. We've all got unique goals, and we've all got a way that we need to determine. You know, the beauty of the vision, right, in a business, in a band, is if you've got a vision, it becomes very easy because Elon Musk, you know, everyone should know who Elon Musk is, no matter where you are in the world. He says to his staff, if it's not going to get me closer to Mars quicker, don't ask me.
Right.
So if you know your vision, then you shouldn't have to sit down every second day and argue about the finer points. You should be able to look at any decision and decide whether it's going to get you closer to what you're trying to achieve.
Yep.
You might make a mistake, but you've still done it with the right intent because you believe it's going to get you closer to where you're going. And that should be the North Star instead of having to make decisions all the time. Yeah.
No, it's so good. It's so good to hear some sense. If you like. But yeah, like it sounds so easy and it makes so much sense. It's just, I just think
it's not that easy.
no, it's not. But the reason, I think the reason why it gets a lot more difficult is because you got a lot more opinions in there. You got a lot more chefs to potentially poison the food. So again, for the lack of a better expression, but
you're right.
Yeah,
because if you don't communicate, then often we're going to overlay or project what we think or feel without getting a better or closer understanding of what was truly being done. Or, so you might see someone do something and you're like, why would they do that? But they might have been doing it for another reason. You might not have all the information. So that's the challenge. But when you've got everyone working on the common goal, it's relatively easier to not get, I guess, personal conflicts around, or just be seeing things the wrong way. And, I mean, look at a band, for example. And there's always one person who ends up like copying the rehearsal fee on a regular basis more often than the others, or, these things happen all the time, right? And they would get pissed off, but then they might not say anything about it. And there's all these underlying communication, struggles around the place, which are often unsaid.
Yep.
And it becomes really clear, like, hey, we're a business, we're doing this for real. We put in $500 a month. It goes into the kitty. The kitty buys everything we need. It's done.
Yep.
Like, no more conversation. Instead of every week going, oh, you should have bought it. Oh, no, it's all right. I'll get you some beers. Like, we'll catch that up. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, there's always someone who loses. And then because of that, you're not working towards your vision anymore.
No. Because
you're too worried about all the bullshit, like and just the silly stuff.
You start building off this, not hatred, but this, I'm so frustrated about this person. Yeah.
So instead of thinking about and working towards this thing that you're trying to achieve, you're just playing around in the mud. And it sounds horrible, but that's what we do as humans. It's how we're built. And we it's not saying we're not team players, but we haven't bothered to be really clear on what the team's trying to do. Whereas if you're playing like a soccer match or a football match, it's obvious. You're trying to get the ball in the net.
Yep. You're trying to win.
You're trying to win. Someone makes a mistake, but the whole team doesn't go and like rip their head off because he made a mistake. They know that guy, or he's trying to get the ball in there. Whereas we don't do that. We stand back and we're like, oh, why did he run over there? I mean, I don't know. Like, he kicked the ball in that direction, but what if we want to go over there? Like, but maybe wouldn't it be better if we went that way? And we're spinning and oscillating in circles because we haven't got a clue where we're trying to get to. And that's and then the band breaks up for whatever reason. Eventually there's a personal conflict or whatever happens, and you move on. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what happens because there was no plan, and eventually the energy fizzles out because what do we do? Someone's going to say, what am I doing this for?
Or again, it's going to hold someone back who wants to actually excel and go a bit further.
Well, I think they're more likely the person that's going to say, what am I doing this for? Because they'll be looking at the other members that maybe aren't interested, and it's like, well, I'm trying to get somewhere. These guys say they do, but maybe their actions don't sort of align to that, which again is completely fine.
Yep,
but they haven't had the conversation about what they're trying to get to. So it's often, I think, the person who wants more out of it that'll get frustrated because they're trying to get more out of it. Whereas the other guys are just like, hey, I'm happy. I want to play on the weekends, and I'm enjoying being part of a unit and a band, and I love playing music, and that's what I do. And that's a completely valid endeavor. The good thing about that is if that's truly what you want to be, then you can let go of all the other bullshit about growing into the world's biggest band. Because if you find 4 people that just want to have fun, all that problem, all those messengers, all that other garbage going on, trying to like pay for the next thing and do the next that, gone.
But that'll also make you feel like, make you feel a lot nicer because everybody wants the same thing.
We want the same thing. So cool. Hey guys, we've got 4 or 5 awesome new tracks now. I know we're not trying to like go big, but it'd be really cool if we all just dropped in like $1,000 and we got these made. I'd love for my grandkids to have it like in high quality. I'd love this, I'd love that. Maybe we'll sell a few CDs for $30, like, whatever, if we just to try and get a bit of pocket money and have a bit of fun, or we'll just send it to people. We don't care. It goes on Spotify. You know, if someone wants to buy a CD, donate $30 to help us pay for rehearsals. Awesome. They're not going, right, who have you guys found a producer? Like, you know, what you know, all these other conversations that could be going on where people are just getting stuck in the, you know, one person wanting this and someone else wanting that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is probably the most important thing to start with, is to find out, you know, you are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, exactly.
So want to achieve the same things. So you mentioned the vision. So how do you create the mission? So say you are on the same page, and everybody wants to go full steam ahead.
Yeah, the vision and the mission are like two ways of saying the same thing in a respect. So our vision at Visible is an business concept, is probably the easiest way to put it. So our vision is to leverage today's technology for a better tomorrow. So it's leveraging what we've got around us, right, to use, and that's like a lofty, sort of floaty sort of vision. Our mission is a little bit more like tangible. So your vision might be just around like we want to produce amazing music in this space and blah 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 and this and create several albums and be doing this for a bit of time. Mission becomes like something that you more tangibly want to achieve. So our current mission is to help 2,000 businesses show up online by 2022. So we've got like an end date and a number that we're trying to get to. So mission is, like a bit more tangible, whereas the vision is a little bit more lofty. But the two really tie together pretty closely because they do. It's just that there's like a mission is something you'll track and work out whether you're getting closer. So you need to create something tangible. You know, however you want to quantify what it is, right? There's a lot of different ways you can look at it. Obviously, back in the day, it was easy, how many CDs you would sell or whatever. Now we're in a digital space. It's very different, which has obviously got its pluses, but also its negatives. So find a way that is meaningful for you, like what you're doing it for, who you're trying to impact. I mean, there's ways you can get really interesting, and there's food venues and people like that have done this, but also a band could go, you know what, for every download or for every something, we might say plant a tree, and then your mission might be to plant 10,000 or 100,000 trees, or your mission might be to like give 10,000 meals to charity. Like you might choose to actually combine your conceptual mission of who you are towards doing some good, and that doesn't take away from your music or whatever. It just means this is what we're about. Like we're about helping people maybe, and we want to tie it to a measurement to give us something to go for, because at the end of the day, when that eulogy of the band actually happens, you want to say something that you did and was memorable. Just seeing a question from Ben. Yes, it's an ESP on the wall. It doesn't get used near enough as often as it ought to. But no, that's right. So you get to that eulogy, you get to that end, whenever the band's going to end, and like everything, you're probably not going to be doing it at 80. So it's going to end at some point. And you want to look back and feel good about it. So if you've got a tangible thing that you can measure, and as I said, back in the day, X number of records or whatever was an easy one, right? But things have moved, so you have to find something new. And there's a lot of businesses the same, because a lot of people are in business, and people always see it as like, oh, you're selling and doing all this stuff, but people are in business for freedom, right? And so you need money for that, but money's not usually their goal. So putting a number on the wall and I want to achieve this much worth of sales actually doesn't tick the box for most people. They want to live a great lifestyle. They want freedom. They want these things. They don't want money. So same as it works for a band like this, I think it works for most smaller businesses and most people, that they want a goal that is a bit more meaningful than just like, hey, how much money do we get in the bank? And you would ask most bands and they'd say the same thing. We don't want a bucket of money. We want the freedom to be able to spend all our time playing music and doing what we want to do.
But that again, I suppose again, it comes back to like when you mentioned before about having the end goal in mind, or sort of like try and reverse engineer your steps. I suppose maybe another way of sort of to say, if you did want to sort of maybe not take it to the next level, but if you did want to sort of be able to do it more full time or allocate more time to it, again, would be to find out roughly like what's the minimum you need to make. And then and then maybe try and break that down and say, okay, well, I actually don't need that much. I've got my rent or my mortgage. I've got my mobile phone, my fuel for my car and whatever. And try and sort of break that down in smaller steps. And that might be a bit more comprehensible to get to.
And as you would know, right, how challenging is that when you say dealing with 4 people? So they've got different commitments, family sizes, life, assets, mortgages, all these different things, which is why everyone aspires for we want to make it to, we want to be the next Metallica, right? We want to be huge, but in reality, most people don't want that lifestyle either. So what they're sort of pretending to aspire to isn't really what they want at all. And when you do break it down and work out what you need to live off and why, you can make it a much more palatable number. It's a number that you can, that just makes way more sense. And even if you say made this much and you did some part-time work around it or something, you can make way more sense of it without having to like swinging for the fences is dangerous, because it just becomes, you just get disheartened because the goal is just too big and doesn't make any sense, and it's not going to happen quickly. No matter who you are. I mean, how many times do you see someone's 6th album, break through, and then, everyone thinks that they've only just been around recently, and then you sort of dig into the history and it's 15 years in the making, and and that's probably going to be the same for everyone else too, in some way, shape, or form, anyway. Yeah.
But that's also why like we were talking about earlier in regards to the whole marketing and sort of trying to look at yourself a bit more online rather than look down at the menu down the corner. So that's something that would probably be a bit interesting to maybe sort of try and delve into a little bit more, just to try and see, like, again, if you are sort of trying to allocate your time, because I think time is one of those things that most people have less and less of the older you get, because, you start a family, you have you have other commitments, you have a full-time job, what most people do. So by the time you then got to find out, how do I allocate my free time the best way possible? Is that going to play a gig every weekend, do 1 or 2 rehearsals per week? Or is it maybe trying to say, look, if we want to take this a little bit further, and here comes the question. If we want to take this a little bit further, being whatever age, whatever level of, commitment that we're willing to put into it, how should we try and market ourselves online? Like, how should we try and sort of change that mindset to try and brand ourselves online? Like you mentioned earlier, you said you reckon about 10, maybe 20% was the actual music and the rest was marketing.
Yeah. So it comes down to 2 things. It's obviously creating some content, but the unfortunate truth about all these social media profiles and everything else is people, you don't just, it's like Spotify. You don't just drop in a track and everyone hears it.
Exactly.
You have to do the work. Yep. And that's what sucks about social media in that respect too, is everyone's like, yeah, I'll just drop some content and that's great. I mean, what develops content engagement, especially for a small operation, small business, a band, is actually you engaging too. So you need to go, right, I'm going to investigate this audience, right? I'm going to find out who these 1,000 true fans are, and let's just go, all right, let's just stay with 1,000. So let's just go, these 1,000 people that I need to pay me $100 a year so we can live off this, right? Where do they eat? Where do they live? What do they do? What are their other hobbies? What instruments do they buy? Do they even buy instruments? Do they have children? Do they not have children? Where did they go to school? All these, like, what sporting teams are they interested in? What other types of music? What do they do online? Are they spending 35% of their time on social media on Facebook, or are they spending 90%? because they're in a demographic that's on sort of Facebook but not really on Instagram or otherwise. This is the type of information you need to understand for those 1,000 core people, because you need to go and talk to them wherever they are. They're not just going to like come running down the road when you put a piece of content out. Let's just put it into a physical realm. Like, hey, just imagine I just held a poster up, right, in the middle of an empty road, because at the moment your Facebook profile, if it's a brand new one, is an empty road, right? There's no one there. And it's 5 kilometers from the highway. And you're just going to stand there and hold a poster up. And that might be the best picture you've ever seen in your life. It might be the best video. It might be the best piece of music. Do you know who's going to come? Your mum, your auntie, because they're like, oh, look. Oh, look, Matt's put a picture up.
Oh, it's so pretty. I like it.
It's so nice, and look, that's because they're your core, they're your 5 true followers. They're not your 1,000. So what you've got to do is you've got to take you out there. And this is a good metaphor. I don't think I've used this one before. So it's you've got to go into the busy streets and you've got to have a chat with someone. You've got to put that poster up in front of someone and chat with them back and forth. And no one wants to hear this, but the reality is that's the work you have to do, because if you strike up a conversation and you have some common interests and then you flick them a link, they might go look at it. They might have a look at a couple of links over a few months, and then in a few months' time, you go and post up something about a gig you've got coming up. Well, they might not buy, but they might, and then they might bring 3 friends with them, and that's how you build it. And that's the effort that everyone needs to put in. Now, I saw a question further up about which I might just dig into because it works for this point.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go for it.
Why don't the posts reach all the followers? So basically, what happens? Sorry, Zoran put it. I can't read the whole thing, but it just says, why doesn't our posts reach all our followers on a Facebook brand page? E.g., if you have 1,000 followers and you put up a post like a gig announcement, only reaches, say, 300. Well, in reality, you're lucky it's getting to 300, which means you've actually got a small sort of active, engaged group of people on Facebook. So at the moment, because they've reduced the algorithm down, you'd be lucky to get 5 to 10%. So if you've got 1,000 followers on Facebook, only maybe like 50 to 100 will actually see it just purely organically without other people starting to interact and engage. So the reason you're getting 300 or plus is because someone might have commented on it. And then because they commented on it, one of their friends might see that. And that's how that's even built to 300. So that's just the way the platform works now, unless you want to pay for it. Which is why those 1,000 followers are so important, because to still get an organic piece of content to a lot of people, you're asking everyone to help you. It's not just a broadcast tool where you're just going to get free advertising to everyone. You actually need that engagement and that activity. So Facebook sucks because a couple of years ago you could put it to them and most of them would see it and it's like, yeah, that was free. But what happens is there's too many Facebook pages, too much interaction, and we were getting frustrated with, I guess, the level of advertising and engagement there. And the reason why that is because, it's a business page. So it's not a person, it's a business in Facebook's eyes. So they don't want businesses ramming just business information down the throats of people, and because they want people to be able to engage with friends and stay on the platform. So that's that's Facebook's reason. But we're still lucky that we can get it to those 300 people for free. All we have to do is a little post. So it's a matter of utilizing the followers. So I hope that helps answer the question. But it's still a matter of having those 1,000 true fans. And I would argue that every hour spent messaging people that have engaged on your content or are in relevant audiences and the people that you think would listen to you, every hour you spend on that is probably better than an hour spent rehearsing.
Yeah, that's actually very, very true. And I think I just thought of that while you were talking about the whole way the people are commenting and engaging. Every time you put up a post on your personal page about I'm just having this for dinner, you get 2 or 3 comments. When you put up a poster saying, it's my wedding anniversary, it's my birthday, it's my son's first birthday, as it was the other day, you get 100 comments.
Yeah.
And that's why, because you have that massive engagement. So I suppose that is not that much different, even if it's a personal page.
No, it's the same thing for personal page. It's just different type of content. And I'd argue that a band's content, does lean more on people's, I guess, like their leisure or their interests. But in the case of Facebook, it's a business page as such. And you're still effectively, you're trying to promote. I mean, you are promoting. It's no different to advertising for toilet paper, or whatever. It's still the same thing. You're trying to get people to come to you. You want them to hear music, you want them to engage, and that is a business. So that's why you are limited, and it's okay, because it's as good as it's going to get. It's going to get harder in a year. A year ago it was better, but today's today, and that's all you can do is work with what you've got. And we're really lucky that we've got these platforms that are free. Any ad in any newspaper 10 years ago, you have to pay for. Like, you'd have to pay for it. So, apart from, some free gig guide, local papers and things around there, you'd basically have to pay for everything. So we're really lucky.
Yeah. I can see that we might do that at the same time. I see Ben Daughtry. He's actually from a really cool band I had on a couple of months ago called Numb. They're from the UK. Play some really cool ska reggae music. Everybody should check them out. I think they've got. Nice. I think they are. Let me also start by saying these guys are on point when it comes to doing stuff yourself. Like, they're doing all the videos, content, like really, really good at that. But anyway, so his question here is, how many posts a day on Facebook would you suggest should generate a steady increase in followers? And at what time would be the best time to post?
Yeah, okay. So the answer isn't so simple on Facebook. For starters, it depends how much content you've got, and so you don't want to just be continually punching out 3 or 4 posts a day just because you've got the content if no one's engaging on it. But if you're getting a lot of engagement, then there's no harm. I actually don't think there's an upper limit unless you feel it's diminishing your people's engagement on other things, because as we said, we're only going to get like maybe 100 to 200 people, 300, 400, depending on how the audience interact with that post off 1,000, then you sort of, everything can be, so it's not necessarily the same 200 or 300. So there's no harm in posting extra. Now they will feed it to the core group of people, but then they will feed it to different people throughout the, throughout your 1,000 to see if they will engage with it, because they're testing as well. The algorithm's always going to be saying, does this person want to see this content or not? So I'd say there's no upper limit. But also I find that people struggle to put a lot of content out. So don't beat yourself up if you can't put 2 or 3 posts out a day. We don't. We put a post out probably daily, generally, across Facebook now, just because that's a good cadence and a good number. It all depends on who you are. If you go to a major players in social media or like large following, bands or personal development type speakers and things, some might put several out a day, and that's good. It works for them. It keeps their numbers up, but it doesn't have to be that way, and it may be just unnecessary work. So I'd always be balancing out, I guess, that effort expended. And I hope this helps a little bit, Ben, but I think is engagement is more important largely. So I'd rather more time spent on having as much sort of individual communication and that where possible than adding extra pictures of yourself, because there's enough there. As long as your page is active and there's new information and new images and things going up, then that's usually enough to satisfy a fan. So it's more about what you can do to boost and build more rapport. Whereas 3 shots of the same gig aren't necessarily going to get anyone more excited, if that makes sense. So I hope that. Yeah, content rather than numbers, definitely. So I definitely look at content. So don't diminish your page by having like lesser quality content, but don't look at behind the scenes stuff as poor quality either. So just because it might not be the best shot or it's a bit blurry or whatever, think about like what's value adding content as opposed to the best imagery you've got, because imagery, videos, whatever that is, something that's interesting, adding value, some new music, some what you guys are up to, what's going on. All that content is stuff that as a fan and as a core fan that you really want to see. And that's what I would be focused on, and increase the level as it suits you, or decrease rather than stopping. If you don't have enough good content to put up, that's okay. There's lots of different trains of thought on it, but my view is to be as practical as possible and just always put yourself in the shoes of one of those, one of your fans, and think like, do they need to see that other image? Am I going to disrupt them? If they just see this one again in a minute, or are they, is it something that they really, really want to see?
Yeah.
And does it add value? But remember, not everyone's going to see it anyway, so there's no harm in more volume.
So again, but in regards to that, so if you did want to sort of try and boost your good content, so say you've spent a lot of money, or you made a really cool video, which again, actually Ben's band makes some sensational videos, and have actually bought really good gear and learned how to use it. Again, for the whole reason of being better in a sort of DIY scenario. But say if you have these really, really good looking videos and you want to sort of push them out, would that be something, would that be the type of content that you would recommend sort of trying to throw a bit of money behind? Yeah,
100%. Again, we roll back to that, like, what's the call to action? Like, what are you trying to achieve from it? So if the only reason is without a call to action, without a vision or what you're trying to achieve from it, at some point you're going to be like, why am I doing this? I'm wasting money. So you haven't wasted any money, but you'll feel like you have, because you haven't tried to achieve anything with it. So if you put out, let's say you've just invested in a new EP and you want to put out a couple of little teaser videos or whatever that is around it, you need to know what you're trying to achieve. Either that post is a series of posts or other things that direct right back to a purchase page where they can actually buy something from you, and you might have a clean path to revenue, or you just have to be comfortable that you're investing in awareness and reach, and because that's basically all you're doing. If you're just putting an ad out, that's just like, have a listen to this music. Now, we have ads like that, and that's what the top of a funnel is. But without investing in the process and the rest of what the funnel is meant to do, at some point you're just going to get frustrated because you're spending money and you don't know why. Because again, it comes down to vision. If you burn $5,000 on Facebook ads, and at the end of the period of time you're like, yep, that got us. You know what? That got us closer to our vision, but didn't quite land us our vision. You're not going to be upset. But if you burn $5,000 on Facebook ads and then you're like, we still don't even know what we want. Why did we do that? That doesn't even make sense. Why are we on Facebook? That's the issue you're going to get stuck with, because you just don't know what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. But I suppose it comes down to it's like the whole idea of having a business plan, like actually having that sort of mapped out. But yeah, it's just like I'm just sort of like, while you're talking, I was thinking back on so many different conversations I've had, and I think it's just something that it just seems so unimaginable for a lot of people, because it's a conversation that doesn't feel natural in a musician's environment, in a rehearsal room. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, and I think you and I had a chat about it on the weekend as well. Like, it's the fact, like the music is the fun part, but you also need the other part. Like you need that segment that also is like, oh yeah, cool. It's the same as kind of like if you open a bar, like I want to start a bar, and I want to talk to people and sell them a nice beer. But as soon as you shut the bar, you're still gonna mop the floor, man. You're gonna clean everything out, and it's all the boring bits. It's like you have to have that whole balance. And I think that is just something that so many people not necessarily overlook, but they sort of pretend, it's hopefully it'll happen by itself. It'll sort itself out. Like we'll keep geeking, we'll keep writing good music, and the other things are going to come automatically. As it.
Yeah, someone will discover us, and it will just blow up. And the problem is, if that happens, you probably will blow up, because you don't know what your motivations are. So let's say all of a sudden you made it really big somehow, I don't know what happened, but someone massive just decided to share, let's say a YouTube video or something that you guys have put up, and it had 39 views, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it hits 5 million views. Everyone's on the phone. Like, okay, for starters, who's going to call you? How can they even call you? How do they get in touch with you? Like, is your website set up? Do you have a manager? Do you have something going on? 3 of the 4 band members have full-time jobs. They love their job. They're not leaving. Hang on, you guys have to go on a global tour.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Oh shit. Hang on, we just made it big. What do we do? My wife won't let me go. Or I've got this other problem. Or these again. We're just talking about communication, right? Because hitting 5 million views on a YouTube video isn't necessarily going to give you what you want because you don't know what you want. It's exciting that more people listen to your music, and I'm not downgrading that at all. I'm just saying it's you don't know then where to go with it still because you haven't had those conversations. When good things happen, you don't know whether they're good or bad things because some people will be excited that you're growing and other people will be like, oh, actually, I'm just having fun. I thought we were just having fun here. I didn't think this was my whole life, and I wasn't planning on quitting my day job, which is not how everyone is, but I'm just using that as a really good example where there's split, I guess, interests in a band, and it's going to happen amongst groups of people, and that's why you need leadership, and that's why you need to have communication, because otherwise, if you say make an agreement, listen, we listen to this podcast, and what Matt said about engaging, that really makes sense. Like, I can engage right now. It doesn't cost me anything. All it costs me is some time. And everyone around the room goes, great, we're going to do an hour a day each. And then 2 guys or 2 members go, I was going to watch a movie. I'm not really that keen for that kind of. I like playing, and I'm happy to pack up my drum kit, even though I've got a pretty big kit and it takes me a long time, and I'm going to whinge about that a little bit, but I'm okay with that. But doing 2 hours of writing to fans, quote unquote, on my page, or who are chatting in music related or whatever group it is, that's not fun. And I'm not willing to do that hard work because I'm not really in it for that. And that's the challenge.
But at the same time, it's also it can be the be all and end all. Like it's such a crucial thing. It's because you're in a 4-5 way relationship effectively.
That's true. And if there's no leader, like for starters, if there's no sort of leader or a way to form and make a decision, you're in trouble before you've started. And it's not to say these things can't be fixed, right? And so this is not sort of doom and gloom. It's really an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to discover what people really truly want and make sure that you're aligned, because it might just take one sort of piece of communication or one discussion to really open the lid on what's going on. And maybe your band is already at a point where it's well and truly, popping above, I guess, where you are, but you're holding it back because subconsciously we'll do that as a group because someone's holding on to the anchor, right? And they might not look like they're holding on to the anchor, and they might not even realize they're holding on to the anchor, but they're holding on to the anchor.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like you only move as fast as the slowest cart or the slowest train, right?
Yeah, definitely. You still have to bring the whole train with you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I can kind of tell. I can like sometimes when you are talking to people, you can almost tell who is up here and who is not. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, oh man, like it's such a shame sometimes to sort of see that there is these what do you call it, like you're sort of uncalibrated, like it's to come up with a, like I just like that word, the word, because it's the same thing. If you have something that just needs a little bit of tuning and then everything clicks together.
That's one way of putting it, right? But another way to look at it is like there's a lot of great artists in history that their work wasn't discovered until later. Now, what people don't like to hear about these great artists is that they were usually poor, incredibly broke, had nothing. They died, and 300 years later, we're looking at their paintings and they're worth millions and millions of dollars. Now, there's genuine artists, and that is different to being a successful band. And I'm not saying a successful band can't be a great artist. Like they can. And but in my point of view, there are different things, and the tension that comes from, I guess, different types of agendas within the band may be the very thing that helps it create the music it does. So there's nothing wrong, but with any of them. But what we're talking about is whether or not you're trying to be a bigger commercial operation and I guess live from the output of the band. And I think that's needs to be very clearly,
identified
and considered, because that's what we're talking about. Like the most amazing piece of music or album or anything is not what we're talking about. It's whether or not you can live off this thing, whether or not you want to live off this thing, whether or not you want to get this music to the people in your lifetime. Because we've now got this digital world, right? That someone you might be long gone. Now it's probably not called Spotify, but who knows what it's called. And in 300 years time, someone might dig out this album or EP that someone created and be like, wow, these guys were instrumental in changing XX and X genre. How people might study it because it's there, it's digital, it's going to be there in some sort of categorized form, even more so than ancient paintings, so to speak. It's going to be available. But that's not going to help you live off being a band.
No.
They're very clearly different things.
But I think there's also another avenue, another angle to it. I think there's also a lot of sort of stigma connected to the fact that you're sort of saying to people, "Oh, look, I've got this idea. I actually want to create a band, or I'm a solo artist. I want to try and give it a shot, and I want to be a singer-songwriter and tour the world." And I think a lot of people would say, "Well, don't you need a day job? What are you really gonna do? You're too old. Your songs are too bad. There's always gonna be all these obstacles." And I don't think you would have that sort of same sort of condescending, or maybe you wouldn't have that same conversation if you were saying to someone and said, "Oh, I want to start a lunch bar. I want to I want to take over a franchise, a Subway or McDonald's or something like that." Oh, wow. That's fantastic. You're going to start your own business. Whoa. You have a completely different way of sort of approaching that conversation. But if you do say to someone, "Oh, look, I've got this idea. I want to set up a band. I've got everything. I've got my vision and mission and everything lined up." And as you mentioned earlier as well, I've got a bit of money to sort of give me, 6 to 12 months leeway. I think a lot of when you're talking about all the core fans, I think a lot of them are going to give you a little bit of, "Are you sure? Are you good enough?"
Oh, look, of course. I mean, that happens with everything, right? I mean, it truly does, because that's let's say your mum. So your mum, her primary goal in life, whether she really wants it to be that or not, is to make sure you're safe and protected. So they would rather, in some ways, that you didn't try and you weren't, because they just don't want to see you get hurt. So, I mean, they would never answer it that way, and it's certainly not what their core want for you is. They want you to have the best life. They want you to achieve. But they're often the first people that, we'll call them the naysayers, right? So they'll often be your closest and most vocal naysayers, and they just don't want you to get hurt. They just don't want you to fail. And we're living in a society now that has basically we're so scared to fail. We're so scared to fail. And when you're a child, that's cool. You're your kid starts trying to walk. You're like, "No worries. Pick him back again. Keep going. Yay!" All these things. You make one mistake. Oh, that was an adult. Did you see that adult make that mistake? Oh, he made a mistake. And when we turn it, really quickly, our egos sort of just prevent us from wanting to make mistakes. And then so the people that love us around us, they don't want to see us make mistakes or fail either, even if it's a small failure. It might be so insignificant, but they just don't like us being put in that position. So that's definitely one of the demons that you'll have to overcome. But what's so interesting now, and like if we were to draw the line between, say, someone who wanted to start as a solo, let's call yourself a solo artist, whether or not you sort of sing and play drums and all that in your own spare bedroom and put the tracks together, like let's just say you're a solo artist. 10, 20 years ago, like you would have to go out and gig all the time to get anywhere. You could now do it from like 9 to 11 p.m. in your spare room. You could do it with the equipment that would keep you quiet enough. You could put music out. You could create a product. You could engage with your fans. You could actually build this entire thing after hours when the rest of your family was asleep, so to speak. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to do all these things that you may otherwise have had to do. Hey, we've got to play on Friday night, 3 hours away. You have to leave work at lunchtime. Sometimes those things are too big a challenge, for people to overcome, whereas this modern situation we find ourselves in gives us unbelievable freedom. Like wherever you've got an internet connection and access to your equipment, you can start something, you can do something. And that's really powerful if you think about it, and underutilized, because it might not be fun, it might not be the way we want to do it, but it's a way that you could start to build some freedom and have control. And for example, like this is why I said it, you can go back to those naysayers and go, hey, look, I've been just developing this anyway. Look, it's already doing well. I haven't even had to like have that conversation, with your partner or someone that like, this is it, I have to quit everything. I have to gamble everything. You don't have to. It's, you don't necessarily have to, depending on what you're trying to achieve, because this technology is there. And that's why I come back to our vision, which is, leveraging this technology that we have to improve our lives tomorrow.
And with that technology as well, as a band, I think you can actually create songs and put them out without having to gig, or without having to gig very much, because the vast majority of your fans are everywhere. Yeah. So again, they are online. Like every time I find a new band, I haven't seen them. I don't even know if they're someone I can see. They might be in another continent, but I can enjoy the music. I can follow them and become a super fan quite quickly. Yeah. I can order a T-shirt. I can do a lot of stuff.
And that's the thing, right? Because I guess, let's say 10 years ago, if you had 1,000 fans, they had to be in your town, right? Because that was the only way. Yeah. They had to be local. Whereas now, like the 1,000 people that might be the most interesting group of, or most interested individuals in your art, they could be all over the place. So what is a gig? Well, a gig might be that you set up the equipment and you go live once a month in your rehearsal space, or you hire a space to film and do it properly, because maybe if you want to enjoy the actual personal aspect of playing the live music, which I know is important to a lot of people, and fair 100%, enough, yeah. Like maybe you just rent out a venue, you can do that, set up a multiple camera streaming operation and invest the money you would have otherwise invested in doing like a live concert for those people, because as we said at the start, you might have 1,000 interested people in Europe and you're in Melbourne, and that doesn't help anyone. So those are the types of things which I think we'll see people do more of, and I think that's also within your control, because you can get a lot more like, say for example, you're trying to decide, let's say you're a bigger band and you're trying to decide between which venue you're going to choose for like an EP launch. Well, you don't have to invest in the, underwriting a bigger venue, for example, because you invest the money and do it online. You could launch online, and so if 10,000 people watch it or 100 people watch it, you're spending the same money, and they can keep watching it for days and weeks, months and years, because it's live. It was live put up, but then it stays on the platform. So it's not just this finite gig that was, a few hours of you doing a few sets and that's it.
And you can now actually charge. I've seen that on Facebook. When you create an event, you can actually charge a fee for people to access the stream.
So there's so many options now, and there's so many other ways that you can monetize it. And Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about what everyone's doing. Like, I'm not spending as much time in this marketplace as you are these days. So I'm not coming from a position of knowing it all, but I feel like there's probably a lot more opportunity for people to do things and utilize these tools more to help them, even if it's just to help them get more people to their physical gig. I think it'll still serve to produce that outcome.
Well, I think in regards to sort of doing all that, like actually paying for ads online when you're paying for a gig, I think that's something you probably need to utilize if you are touring. Like if you actually go on a like you move outside your local ecosystem, if you like. Because again, then you are all of a sudden you're targeting people that might not know you. Whereas, like, if you are like for a lot of the bands I've been speaking with have obviously been local bands, and they have, they are incredibly talented, and most of them have a pretty decent fan base in Perth. But so they don't need to do much advertising except for just sharing stuff on their social pages and stuff. But say you were to then go over east or go overseas, completely different story. Then you are literally unknown. And then you need to sort of start building or start putting some money behind and some thoughts behind some networking.
So, for example, something you could do a little bit more complicated is that you could, like, for example, you could use Facebook and create a lookalike audience of the people that are your current followers, and let's say they're based in Perth. If you're going to go to Melbourne to do some gigs, and you probably wouldn't right now, but if you're going to go to Melbourne to do some gigs, you can use that lookalike audience and use Facebook to target people in that physical location that have the attributes similar to the group of people that are your current fans, because they're the ones most likely to be interested and engage. So you can use those types of, and what I would do there is I'd start like a few months out. Like I'd start just like putting some content out there, starting to and that's worth investing, because there you go. Your vision is to go and have successful shows in Melbourne. So you're starting to invest in getting some people there. I'd always also look at things like using meetups and also like Eventbrite, because if you put similar content up there to other shows and things that have been used, for example, then people will, the algorithms within those programs will actually show other, people that might be interested as well. So there's other things that you can use, like you might just set up a meetup for people to come and hang with the band. It might not be the actual gig, but you might utilize those things to just try and like drag in those fans, drag in those people who, like, you might be then trying to get you 1,000 true fans in Melbourne, and they're not just Perth, you're going to Melbourne, but you can utilize these tools to get across and target certain areas. And there's a lot of technology available just by using a little bit of effort that you could go to. So say, for example, you've got these people in Perth. You might put in you might do a lookalike audience against that, which is, again, it's like a funnel. It's not that bad. You just need to learn what it is, and then once you go in and learn what it is, it's like, okay, so this is language I'm using, but it's just something to figure out, right? So once you go in and figure it out, you've got this lookalike audience, and then you can basically create that. It might come up with, say, 10,000 people in that Melbourne area that has a really close set of interests similar to the group. Great. So you've got 10,000 people that you're trying to get, say, 200 or 300 into a gig for. No problem. So then you just go and focus on putting content in front of those people to get them to a point till you get them to a call to action to come to your event. And that's the structure you would do. I've just seen Ben jump on with a question about how much should you invest a year in a digital marketing strategy. And the point is, it's a silly question, but as in silly answer, but it's just not. It just depends on what that vision is. So typically 6 to 10% of a business's turnover, they would tend to spend on marketing in general. That ratchets up and down depending on like what's going on. Like a really massive traditional business might spend 5 or 6, and a business that, say, sells an online school product for $500 might actually spend like 30 or 40%, because there's no delivery costs. They don't have to do anything else. They just sell it, and the rest is just profit, right? So, but typically a business would spend 6 to 10% of turnover. And then what you would increase that on is how aggressive you want to be. So how much more money do you want to invest to try and push things along faster, which is what you'll often do at the start of when you're starting a new business or a new band. So that's just a general rule of thumb, but a lot of startups will go and drop 10 or 15 grand in. A lot of startups will start with zero. A lot of existing 50-year-old brands might just be spending a small amount of money because they can and they've been there for a long time, or they might be pushing new product lines and investing really heavily in marketing as well. So it's really hard one to answer for you, unfortunately, and it really does come down to your personal requirements and again where you're trying to go with it.
I've got just about talking sort of about spend and stuff. I've got a little sort of segment here I'd like to touch base on, which is cash flow, which is something obviously a lot of you hear from a lot of businesses saying, when you start out, it's going to cost you X to start out, and hopefully in a couple of years you break even and then you start making money and stuff. Is there any sort of tips or advice that you could give in regards to sort of taking cash flow serious from the get go? Because again, let me just stress that up a little bit more. Obviously, let's assume in a band situation, and I know businesses are different depending on the situation. You mentioned online businesses and all the stuff, but let's assume the bands have all the gear to begin with. So let's say each, the drummer has a drum kit, the guitarist has his amp and all that stuff. So when you catch up, all you have to, you each have your gear, but moving forward, you're going to go into the studio, you're going to do some ads, some funnels, as you were mentioning. So how should you treat that cash flow? You're going to start out on the dead.
Yeah. To bring it into a business situation, it happens all the time as well. I mean, how often do you see a business starting up, say, a new product line, for example? And what happens is you're spending all this money in life because you spend money, and you just sort of go and mix it all together, with the money that you're spending on the band or rehearsals, and you don't really know how much you've spent or what you're doing across the board. And that becomes the biggest challenge because it's diluted. You just don't you have a perspective. You feel like you're spending, but you don't know what exactly it is that's really going on. So my biggest thing to say there is, if you haven't, I would be running a separate bank account, however you want to structure it. Give everyone signatory access with, say, 2 people need to approve a payment. Put that money in rather than it just sort of gradually bleeding out of your pocket. You can put it in chunks, or you have an agreed amount per month or something, just to keep everyone honest and not honest as if they're going to be dishonest, but just honest as in you can see what's actually happening. You can physically see where it's going, what's happening, because when it's just coming out of your pocket, it might feel like a lot, or it might not feel like a lot, or it's coming out of one person's pocket more. Until you sort of pull the receipts and figure it out, you don't necessarily know where the money's going, but also that'll help you take it more seriously if that's indeed what you want. It'll help you just you might be having a bit of fun, and it might have started as we're going to play some music and we'll share rehearsals, and everyone just put in this much money, and you grab a carton of beer every time, and that maybe that happens, and then maybe after a few rehearsals you're like, guys, that carton of beer, I'm happy to have a couple of beers, but we could be investing that in Facebook or anything, right? And then those are the kind of bits of conversation that come about, because you're like, well, how does this align towards our vision? If our vision is to become this massive band, and we're dropping $50 on a carton of beer every 2 nights or 3 nights, and they're split between 4 or 5 band members. It's not as though you're just drinking all the time, but it's just a cost, right, that's going in there. Same thing goes if you're, say, rehearsing 3 times a week, but you're in a pretty tight situation. Everyone knows what everyone needs to do. You're not writing stuff at the moment. Maybe you only need to be there twice a week. Well, it's time, because 4 or 5 hours it's probably invested in, being out at night to rehearse, but also money, and maybe that sort of stuff is invested in a better place. So I think that would be my core tip, is to And look, you might not have to set up separate bank accounts, but someone runs the money, right? Someone's the bookkeeper,
the accountant.
Someone's like, giving out the bit of paper. Like it's probably just a, Google sheet or something. It's not like a significant, job. It's just someone's got control of it, and they know what's going on. They know where the money's being spent, and you're putting it. It's a good way to check that you're putting it in the right place.
I suppose it's also a good way of sort of keeping people a bit more accountable. So again, like you know you're in it. Exactly. So you have this equity, and you don't just want to sort of fizzle that away and on too many cartons of beers when you, as you said, when you could be putting into to advertising or something else.
Yeah. Into whatever that is, or maybe you just want to be there for fun, and that's exactly what you want. No problem. You just want to make sure that Jimmy over there is paying for his fair share because he seems to always stiff us on the carton. Yeah, no problem.
And that again, it comes back to the whole thing, just to be on, just to have the conversation, just be on the same page. Yep. Let's see. So I suppose we can obviously go back and forth a little bit, but another thing, just to try and actually change the subject a little bit, is something else I would like to have you just touch on as well, is actual podcasting, because you have a couple of podcasts yourself. And I suppose that's actually, in my opinion, in a way, is a very underrated platform for people to use, because it technically doesn't cost anything. Like if you have a microphone at home, if you got, just a decent gear and you have an internet connection, you'd be able to record a conversation just like we're having right now. So I suppose the only real expense would be, again, if you do want to sort of host it on, if you want to have it put out there, so you have it sitting same way as you have like a website or something like that. But coming back to the track again, in regards to podcasting, how did you start on podcasting? What was sort of your reasoning behind it?
Well, that's probably a pretty good question. I mean, I don't know why I truly started the first one, other than I just felt like a really strong desire to do that. For me, it was kind of cool because it's, as I said, it was in many ways. I mean, I'm sitting in my office at the moment and I'm surrounded by equipment that I otherwise wouldn't have in a marketing company. So there's cameras over here, I've got lights up here, I've got all these things going on, microphones. I've got one of my podcasts had up to 6 people in it at one point. So we had to get not just a little tiny piece of equipment. We needed some more gear in here. So I kind of recreated, I suppose, what I always wanted to have, this home studio and everything. And so there's a couple of reasons. I enjoy it. It's good fun. You get to have these kind of communication, like these chats. We would have had it anyway because of our relationship, but knowing each other. But it's something that you can meet new people and you can just have a really good conversation with them and just chat away and you build a stronger connection, I think, than just having meetings or whatever. And you get to do it with people all over the world if you want, and that's really cool. So largely to build, I guess, a brand and a business, but only because I find it fun. One of the biggest things about this is, like, even this conversation already, like I've probably already created 6 to 10 pieces of content in this conversation when my team go and try and chop it up later, because it can be like we've had a good chat. Like I feel like there was some interesting stuff in here. There definitely was. And that means I don't have to sort of sit down and rack my brain going like, oh, what are we going to do? Like what am I going to talk about? Like a conversation is usually the easiest way. So that being said, it's not that hard to cut it up, sort of to master things. You don't have to necessarily do it to an extreme level, although you can. There's a choice of putting it out pretty vanilla, and then there's a choice of getting it hosted properly and things like that. But hosting it properly, you're only talking about maybe a couple of $100 a year or whatever. So it's not that it's an expensive exercise in that regard. I mean, the average band would have everything they need to record a podcast if they wanted to, and like that might be an interesting way of creating content. Like let's say you jam on Monday nights. Let's just say you always do that. Like you might have a Monday night post or like pre-jam podcasts that you may even do live on Facebook, for example. Like now, because that's pretty easy. Everyone's together, pretty normal, probably at the start of the night because you're probably got more energized rather than the end. But let's say you do it at the start. You might let fans jump on and say something. And you might just talk about what you're doing tonight, what you hope to get out of the session tonight. You might be working on this new song. You might be able to sort of see people setting up around it. And that might be a really cool piece of content, which effectively is like a podcast, which is a podcast, but it's also a live show, and it's some regular content that you could, that those 1,000 fans would really be keen to see. And it's the type of thing that you can test. There's no real investment. You probably have everything you need. I mean, you could do that on your phone if you really wanted to, with nothing else. You could do it on your phone. You just have if you wanted to make life a bit easier, you could just get like a little tripod sort of thing just like this, and you could actually walk around and watch everyone set up and get all the members of the band to talk to the camera for 10 minutes. And that in itself would help grow your operation. You're not doing anything new. You're just doing what you were doing anyway, and you're just sharing it with those people.
Yep.
And that's why podcasting is really cool, because it's an intimate conversation. It's between your ears. Like, it's the type of thing that you can do as a second activity, which we know that with music, right? Our whole life we've listened to music when we run or do this or do that, or like we always have the radio on in the radio. We always have music on, in the office, like all day long.
Yep.
It's like we can't handle not having it. It's an excellent second activity that we can do whilst doing anything else, the gardening, whatever. So that's why podcasting is really cool, because as opposed to trying to bombard someone on Facebook and take their like prime focus, we're only asking for a secondary focus. And that's when you're driving, you can listen to it when you're doing anything. That's where podcasting, as you now know, and can be really cool. But the true power of it, the genuine true power of podcasting is actually the one-to-one, or the small group connections, and the way that you can build a network anywhere you want with almost anyone you want. All they have to do is say yes, and once they do, there's something about recording one of these for half an hour or an hour or longer that just like gives an instant bond that lasts. And people I've podcasted with for a long time ago are still people that I could call on at any time. And that's what's really cool. And if you're wanting to build up those core fans of yours, it's a really great way to do it as well, whether you spotlight a fan or however you want to do it as a band. I mean, I know it's not necessarily what every band wants to do, but it could be a way that you could really grow a band. Doing something that's relatively comfortable, I think, for you is being around like this type of equipment. Generally, it's pretty comfortable for a band, or at least some of the band members to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I was about to say, it certainly doesn't fall natural for everybody. Like when I started doing this, and I still am to a certain degree every time I start, I'm almost pissing my pants before I click start. It's because it is intimidating because you're on the spot. It's live. There's no. It's the same as if you play a gig,
Exactly.
and you go, oh shit, I just broke a string. I just gotta smile and keep playing. You know what I mean? I just dropped the drumstick. Oh man. It's not the same as if you're in the studio. Oh yeah, we'll just do another take. That's fine. No one will ever know about it. But yeah,
100%. It's exactly the same. I mean, I'm probably 180 podcasts in, and I still have that same. It's the same feeling as when you're about to start a set, all right, or whatever. It doesn't it doesn't matter how long you've done it. It still gives you a bit of something, which is part of why you're doing it as well, right? So it's the same thing.
And again, I remember very early on when I was and I remember I've written that down here again when you mentioned about episode number 7. So I'll get you to explain that later. But I remember when I came to episode number 8 and 9 or something, and I was like, oh man, I don't think I'm very good at this. I kept doubting myself and stuff. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter, because I'm not doing it for everybody else. I'm doing it for me. I'm literally doing this because I find it really interesting to talk to people, and I've learned fucking so much, man. I've learned from everybody. Some it's been a little bit, some it's been like gastronomical, but the really cool thing that I found out, because you kept going, everybody else who is listening say, oh shit, I actually learned something too. And then people listen back to it after, and you can see like your streams go up, and I can see now in my statistics, people listening to the podcast as well. I was like, wow, that makes it worthwhile. I don't have to be, the best, podcaster, interviewer, chatter in the world. I just got to do it because I find it interesting to talk to you or whoever I'm talking to. I'm talking to Soren that was on earlier. I'm talking to his band tonight. He plays in a Linkin Park tribute band. They are really awesome. Production wise. They've upped their game production wise, but anyway, very, very different setup because again, they're a cover band, not originals. Yeah. But anyway, different story. It's more the fact that all the knowledge and the connections. You say you're spot on with that as well. Like some of the conversations you have, like you talk to someone for like 2 or 3 hours, and you find out as much about that person as probably more than some of their closest friends. Because you have this very, very tight connection, and you talk to someone for 2 or 3 hours and you find out stuff that, for the last 10 years, 20 years.
100%.
It's crazy, man.
It's also, but in what I found, it's also that authenticity, and I think you touched on it there.
Yes.
So if you're authentically you, because as you said before, you were doing this for you, you're doing it to share, but you're wanting to share who you are. So you're not going to align yourself with those 1,000 people. Like it's not going to meet up if you're not authentic about what you're putting out.
Yep.
And we're challenged there because we feel like we should be this or we want to be that, but in reality, we need to be ourselves as much as possible, as often as possible. Otherwise, those people won't be drawn to us. And so that's why such a deep connection is built there. And their friend might not know about that because you've bothered to talk to someone for say 2 hours on what is truly them, what their interests are, what they're doing, and that deep level of rapport spreads. And that's why it's going to work for you, and that's why people give up. And I'll answer the question as you said you're about to ask it, but there's a magic number.
Oh, yeah,
7.
the episode 7. Yeah.
So I think I can't remember the exact stat, but I think it's 92%. So 92% of podcasts fail at 7 episodes or less.
Yeah.
So and that makes sense, right? So we have, if there's no vision, fail, because it gets hard. Like it gets like, oh, why am I doing this? What's going on? I don't know what to do. 3, 4, 5 episodes fail. It's no different. I'm sure like 92% of bands fail before they actually get to a gig. I'm sure there's a number like that as well. I mean, I'm sure there's thousands and thousands of like people that get together and like, yeah, let's do something, and nothing ever happens. But it's a number just. It's the number that starts to work out if you're serious, at least to start off to become serious, because most people don't make it past say 7 weeks if it's a weekly show, or a couple of batches of recording some shows together, because a lot of people think things are a great idea, and it's like the guy you see on the TV, that he's the dad who wants to be a golfer, and he owns like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of all this stuff that sits in the garage, right? And it could just be the next greatest thing is to start a podcast. And most people don't know who they want to talk about. They don't put anything authentic out, and it fizzles and falls away. And that's not to discourage anyone. It's actually to do the opposite. It's to show that if you're serious, there's space there. There's space for you to be a show and for you to get some traction as well, because a lot of people won't give it the necessary effort that it takes to get through those first few, like, well, this is tough. Why am I doing this again? And those are the steps you have to walk through.
Oh, and don't get me wrong, this was incredibly overwhelming by the time I've sort of figured, like it took me about 3 weeks just to even find out how to operate OBS, which again is for everybody who's watching or listening, it's like a free streaming software that you can download, like OBS Studio. And then I sat down, I had to sort of figure that out. And then, and by then, like I was doing all this when we came into isolation. I just needed to do something else. I just had to get out there. And then, by the time, I've reached out to a couple of my, again, close friends and family. And then all of a sudden, like someone starts saying, oh, well, maybe you should talk to this person. It's like, I don't know them. So that's going to be really, really tricky. And then it gets really scary. And then slowly this just grows into becoming something because you keep going. And that to me, I think was the eye opener, was the fact is like, as long as I don't stop, something is going to happen. Something's going to come. I just want to try and keep going. And it's just, it's funny how these things happen, man. And again, a lot of stuff then, happened on the side, and yeah, it's fun. But now it's almost like I'm almost treating this as a business now. I'm not making any money yet, but on the same end, I'm not really spending anything either. As you said, I had all the gear to begin with.
You had all the gear.
free streaming software. I pay to have my internet connection, but
you would have paid for that for Netflix anyway, so
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
That's it.
And then you've got, I mean, you were fortunate, to have mixers and all that gear, but for anyone that doesn't know, and I'm obviously people here are largely looking at they've got the gear, they're in bands, but a Zoom H6 piece of equipment, like little recording device, is only a few $100, and that's a 4-channel, 6-channel if you want to expand it, little piece of it. I mean, that's as much as we've used for a 6-person show. That's quite a reasonable amount of cost. You can get a microphone from $50 or even less. I mean, ideally you spend a little bit more, but for sub maybe $500, which might be what you'd spend on a weekend away or whatever.
You could even just buy one of these, hook it onto your phone. That's it's like $100 and $200 or something. And
you don't need to spend a lot of money. And if you want to do some of the work yourself, which doesn't have to be complicated, then you can go. And even more so, if you want to spend nothing, like everyone should have a smartphone.
Yep.
And if you want to just start going live on Facebook, and then after a while you go, listen guys, I've decided to take it more serious. We're going to move it over somewhere else or do something different or start using OBS or whatever you can, because if you've actually developed proper fans, they will go with you.
Of course,
they're not just going to keep turning up to the same pub, even though you now play at a different venue.
Yeah.
To your fans. If they're actually fans, they will go with you. So the answer is it's free. You can start for free, and I really like the concept where you mix a bit of people's music and all that as well, or you can do some jamming live and all that too, and that's something that any band could do. They could
100%.
use it as a place that they can just showcase a bit of what they're doing, from a music standpoint. And like in the case of a Linkin Park cover band, fantastic. Just you're not hiding any content. Your people know what your content's going to look and sound like. You just chuck it up there and just go and just push stuff live from time to time and just have fun. And you've already got an amazing group of people that already will enjoy Linkin Park. So then you've got this you can just hone in on that niche even more, which is pretty broad, and you're not even having to convince someone about the music. You can just go, hey, we're just producing this content and we're having some fun, and people will enjoy that too.
And I'll be quite honest here. If a lot of the bands that I've had spoken to, if they had a little podcast, if they were putting up a little episode, even if it was just 20 or 30 minutes, every second week or something, I would totally watch it. You know what I mean? And so would a lot of other people. And again, it doesn't cost anything, and you're engaging. Again, you're getting that emotional connection with your fans.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the effort needs to be if you're truly serious. But even if you're not, why wouldn't you want to just have a chat with someone that enjoyed watching you play? That's of course what you would do at the end of a gig. If, in a live situation, it doesn't have to be any different from a digital perspective. It's just different technology that allows us to be anywhere in the world. That's really what it is. It just allows us to, we're not that far away necessarily, but we could be anywhere. We're getting, Ben and other people are talking to us from around the world. We can do this thing where we, this is technically free, and we've got access to this, amazing platforms that we could just have these conversations around the globe. It's insane. It's if you pluck someone out 100 years ago and ask them whether they could fathom this setup. They're winding their Model T forward or something, right? And they're like, what are you talking about?
Lighting a candle and
it's incredible, right? It's so cool, and we've just got it to use rather than let it control us. It's ours to use as a tool.
Yeah, and look, exactly what you said blows my mind sometimes as well. Like right now, I'm talking to you. We're on the same time zone, but like sometimes I've had a chat, in the morning here, and it's nighttime in Canada or evening in Canada or the States and stuff. I had a chat to a guy in New Zealand, a couple of weeks ago, and they're 4 hours ahead. It's like it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But the fact is, the conversation is the same. The quality is the same. It's you're just somewhere else.
And what you can do, which is so interesting, is get to those 1,000 people, or, thousands a number. Obviously, you want to grow beyond that and everything, but you can get to those people quicker in a sense because they can be anywhere. So you're not having to convince your local, like, let's say you're in a small town, you're not having to convince them all that, you're the best thing. You're looking for people that are interested in things just the same way you are.
Yep.
And you've got a much bigger pool of people to find them in, which is what's so cool about it, because who cares where you live? If you love, the influence of Linkin Park and, whoever, but you're also a jazz guy and or whatever, there might be a way that you can, find other people that have the same sort of more unique taste that you do, and that's where these cool pockets of people can be found in different places, and online's a great place to do that. And what I haven't actually touched on, the other thing that's really interesting is groups, and I would urge a band to actually look at setting up either a Facebook group or a group somewhere else where they can just drop in conversations, because as we talked about earlier, and I think it was Ben that asked the question about like 1,000 people, say for example, worth of followers only gets like maybe 100 to 200 people that will engage with it. When you put it in a group, you'll get a higher volume of reach. So you'll get a much larger reach because people are considered to really want to be in a group. They're not just they haven't just liked a page. They want to be in a group and in a conversation. And I would definitely be developing out groups. And even as you get bigger, maybe even different levels of groups. Like you might have a paid group for people that support you on Patreon. And then you're giving them all this extra access and content that maybe the next level don't get. But even just starting out, just build a group as a place that you can just communicate with a lot of people, let them know if gigs change. Like it's just a better format and location for you to be able to talk to more people and have a conversation more regularly. And that's free again, and something that I would urge you to do like instantly. If you haven't got one, just do it. Call it your band name, just stick it in there, add the band members, add your friends, and just get started. You don't have to necessarily post regular content in it. It's just a place where you can even better when it starts to evolve into a place where your fans are the ones creating all the content in there.
Yeah, I was about to say it would eventually form into become a little tight community, of the 1,000 diehard fans eventually.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, perfect. That's a really, really good tip. And I've actually seen other bands do it. Now we bring it up, it makes perfect sense. But again, it's the whole thing, it makes you feel special. Oh, I'm special. I'm a special fan, and I feel appreciated. A t-shirt is coming out. I want that because I'm special. It would give you that extra deeper connection for sure.
So what you do is, for example, if you do have new t-shirts or a new EP coming out, like you put it in the group first.
Yep.
And so you give them a reason to join the group, but also then once they're in there, you reward the people that are giving you that, giving you the love, right? And you give them whatever you can first, and support them for supporting you.
Yeah, that's great tip. Great hymn. And I suppose again, you can go back to the whole thing about you can doing live chats directly with the group, do that extra free interaction there as well.
Yeah, like for example, like one strategy you could use to approach it is if you wanted to do paid ads to try to get people to join your group and tell them there's extra content and all this in the group. That might be the kind of ads you run for a while, for a few months or something, trying to push people to join your group. If they join the group, they'll get access to these like Monday night jam session lives.
Yeah.
So you might choose to put that in the group and tell everyone publicly to go in there and check it out. They get interested, they check it out, and then you're building up, content, but also, the people and language and, just communication happening amongst the other fan, because you might have a really awesome fan who's super dedicated over here and another one over here. They might not know each other, but if you put them in the group together and they start chatting, maybe both of them might have dropped out of the gig because their mates didn't want to come because they're like, oh, tired of hearing about that band. I love them, but I don't want to go every week. But maybe they become friends, right? and that's where you like develop this community around, your own band, where you don't have to be all the energy. You don't have to like contribute at all. You've got this other you'll have these other resources, I suppose, if you want to look at them that way, as a resource around you to help continue the cause.
Yeah. And again, I just thought of that then when you were talking about you have that stuff in the group. You could then also use that as micro content. Like you can take some of that stuff, chop that out and advertise that on your main page, or advertise that on your podcast, advertise that on your funnel, and then say, look, here's a snippet of what we had in the special group and for the Todd community, the diehard fans. So this is what we did last week. If you want to come and join, come over here. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. You have all these extra access.
Yep, exactly. So all that opportunity is there, right? I mean, there's some little like small snippets of strategy, but they're just different things that you can try and choose to do. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's just really knowing, again, going right back to the start, like what's your vision, and then just developing things that will help, because you'll always iterate, you'll always change. Like you'll never drop the first, the song like as it finishes the first time. It's always. No. Yeah, it's always a work in progress, and you'll develop things. But there's some really cool approaches that I would definitely. You want to get everyone talking without you having to do it all. That's really important.
But that's also the cool thing about like how this little snippet of the conversation all of a sudden just grew a little bit there. So if we then sit down in a band and you've got these 3 or 4 or 5 people who all want the same thing, if they just start having a conversation like this. Usually that escalates, and you go like, oh man, wow, we should do this and that. Yeah. And I think that's probably something that would benefit a lot of people, especially if you are sort of wanting to escalate it.
Definitely, because they want more, and if they're the core fans, they really want more. So
100%.
You give them something, otherwise, they might be to spend their time somewhere else or doing something else, and the digital aspect allows you to leverage your time, without you having to be, playing for them, 24/7, so to speak. So it's pretty wild, but there's just so much opportunity. It makes me like, you're just buzzing when you think about it, like how much there is there now, like versus way back in the day when I was a teenager, like trying to create tapes to send off to radio stations and things, and just like you want to cry when you think about it, really. But like what you had to do then, and like you wouldn't even get a return anything.
You'd send out a cassette and like a burnt CD, and like it was.
Yeah, and you were lucky to get, very rarely got a response from anything. But.
Of course, because they would have to send you a letter.
Oh, man. It's a different world now.
Oh, yeah, it's like everything is just instant. It's in your pocket. The whole world, we've got access to all the information in the whole world. Yeah. Right at your fingertips, man. But look, just coming back to your podcast, I've actually had a few people sort of asking before we even started, what sort of podcasts what is this guy doing? What is he talking about on his podcasts? So maybe you want to just to name drop and introduce your actual shows.
Yeah, sure. So I have a personal podcast, which is just myself, which is the Amplify Your Business podcast with Matt J. Hanham. And so largely that for me is talking about is business and talking through people's stories. But really, I mean, we all have a story, and usually as business owners, we're eager to share it. As I said, we're not usually money driven. It's usually we're looking for freedom, or we're looking to solve a problem that we've seen before or experienced ourselves. And I get people on there and just basically have a chat, and it can go in any direction, really. It's amplify your business, but in a lot of ways it's amplify your business and life. And it's really just, it goes through people's stories of their struggles and how they sort of step up and learn and figure out how to create the life they want, I think, in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. And I usually do 1-to-1 sort of deep dive chats there. Yep. And so that's the Amplify Your Business podcast. And the other one is Simple Minds podcast, which is not as in the band, but as in they're a few decades past, really. So we thought we could probably go there. But look, that started off as 6 guys. It's changed around a little bit. We now basically have 4 guys, but the concept of that is having real conversations and encouraging conversations amongst men. So generally, as men, we're pretty crap at speaking the truth or emotions or feelings and life, and it's not all like, it's not Oprah, but it's about guys just unpacking, topics around what it means to be a father and what it means to start a business, or just different challenges around like being a man in this modern world. And I guess to draw a bit of a thought bubble, I suppose. It's like back in the day when we were cavemen, it was easy for us. Like we had to pick up heavy things and catch animals, and we had this, it was pretty easy. But now we have to think, and we have to like co-parent, and like it's a very different life now, and being a man and sort of understanding what masculinity looks like without being angry and going, taking it too far, I think is a challenge for a lot of people, a lot of men. And because we effortlessly, knew how to just like work really hard and pick up things and run, but this challenge, but like understanding emotion and feelings and all these sort of things, it sounds like I'm going really deep in it, but it's just a great way that we're able to give something back, whereas we've had to go and seek out and find people that we could have a conversation, which wasn't just like, hey, how was the local sporting team, or, what's going on there? Did you see the game? And like, I love sport, so it's not inclusive of sport. We talk about it a lot. There's professional athletes in the, and coaches and all that in the squad. But it's just about like, we believe a lot more men should be having conversations rather than just like, skirting away from them. It's a difficult time at the moment in our history and who we have to be to lead a family and do what we need to do. So we're a good 100 episodes into that show now. We're into our third year effectively of weekly shows on that one. So again, we're like a band in that respect. We've got, all these different people, and we've had band members come and go,
that's it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So, but yeah, we I guess have a mission, and that mission is that we're trying to encourage more conversations to happen, and it's helped us, I guess, stay there. So yeah, they're the two podcasts. I mean, you can check out simplemindspodcast.com if you want to look that one up, or you can find it on Spotify or anywhere else, Apple Podcasts, a whole lot, and Amplify Your Business. And if you wanted to just go to Hanham.com, you can go to my website and you'll be able to access everything from there, or you just look up Amplify Your Business or Matt J. Hanham or Simple Minds Podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you want. Like, it's everywhere. So you can go check them out there. And yeah, I've probably done about 60 odd episodes, I think, on Amplify, and Simple Minds was well over the 100 mark now. So yeah, it's definitely past the 7, but my first podcast was 4 episodes in. Right. Collapsed dismally. I spent that was 2015. I spent more money putting that podcast together than I have for these ones, and it only made 4 episodes. We bought all the gear, all this fancy stuff, and nothing. No, went nowhere. So that was 2 guys, and we didn't know collectively where we were going or what we wanted to do, and it very quickly became apparent that it just wasn't worth continuing on with. So it's I've had the same failure experience myself.
Right. So just out of curiosity, what was those 4 episodes about?
It was business and marketing. It was actually the early days of Visible, and it really was a podcast around, it was called Visible in Stereo. There was 2 of us, but like the business partnership broke down around that time or not long thereafter. So that was really the reason. And it was because we didn't see the business the same way.
Right.
So that's why we weren't on the same page. Like
there you go.
It's the exact example we've been talking about the whole time. So it works in every context.
Yeah. And so how did you find out that you were gonna keep the business and the partner wasn't?
Because I told him.
All right.
I said either I'm buying it out or I'm leaving. So here's your choice. And and we worked out an amount, and I bought him. I bought his half share, and that was that. So it was coming. I mean, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was anything other than a mutual decision that we should no longer be doing this together. And we worked that out, and I paid for his share, and we moved on.
Good.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's
it. That's what you do, and you know, a band might choose to do the same thing. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's not no big deal, but it's
something that has to happen if you're serious. Like if you wanna keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think really before we head over, I know there's a couple of extra Q&As. I've got some here that was sent in early as well.
Sure.
I was about to say, I usually ask people if they have any tips and tricks, but you've given quite a few already. So
I think we've put a few out there.
Well and truly. So unless there's something else you've thought about, it would be good. I really need to drop this one as well. Then I don't know, is there anything you've thought of anything you would like to share we haven't covered already, or?
Look, I mean, all I would say is there's a lot to do, but at first, just pick off a couple of battles. So, I mean, we talked about the engagement thing, and one of the easiest things to do would be just go like an hour a week or an hour a day. Just go, I'm going to go and talk to people and chat to people in the community and like raise the awareness of my band. So I'd do that. And the second thing would be to start posting something on socials if you haven't already. So I would actually I shared with you a link. We've got a bit of a planning kit. If you want to,
I'll put that up.
We can chuck that in. But I would just plan something out and just get comfortable with creating content. Like I know technically a band creates content, you know, all the time, but it's sort of different sometimes to get yourselves on social media. And we've got a little planning kit that you can just download for free and check it out if you want to do that. I mean, there's heaps of other tools we've got, and even some online courses and things on Facebook ads and all that if people wanted to go down that path. But basically just start something. And so if social media is where you think, you know, you could get some growth after listening to this, then go and grab that planning kit and just start trying to put together something, because you have to fail a little bit, right? You have to iterate. And if you don't start, nothing's ever going to happen. So that would be my biggest takeaway, I guess, other than, you know, what we've talked about so far.
Yeah. And I suppose, as you're saying, like the whole consistency, just keep moving. Keep trying, trial and error. Yeah.
Keep moving. I mean, there's nothing worse than standing still. You just have to find a way to keep taking some steps towards something. And that might just be learning something. Fine. Learn something. But just keep moving forward, because it's so easy to get stagnant and you just oscillate and you just end up nowhere.
That's it. Yeah. So again, another thing in regards to learning, like I've spoken to a lot of people about that as well. Like YouTube has tutorials for literally anything you can think of.
Absolutely.
And that's again another free resource.
Yeah, it's all there. It's all there.
Yep. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's jump over and see what we've got. We've got a couple of questions here. So I've got one here. I suppose some of this we might actually have covered, but I'm just gonna run through them anyway. I had one here that says, which platforms should I focus on and why? But I suppose you mentioned before, you should have probably a little bit of everything. But anyway, I'll let you answer.
Yeah, I mean, in a really short answer, is exactly where your audience is going to spend their time.
Yep.
So if you believe your audience is on Facebook all the time, then go there. If they're on Instagram a lot, go there. If they're like an 18 to 22-year-old demographic and you think they're the people that are really going to enjoy my music, and if you're that specific, then jump on TikTok a lot. Like, or, you know, the answer is, where do you think your audience is going to be? And it should be relatively easy to, I guess, find that information by looking and observing, rather than, you don't have to go find a marketing report on it. Just go, okay, who are the people that I think are people, and where do they spend their time?
Yeah.
And then just go and talk to them there.
Yep. Yeah. Perfect. Another one here, I suppose that could be a little bit of a sort of another debate in the current climate here as well. But if I have a video, should I put it on Facebook or YouTube? Because Facebook really are pushing a lot of videos at the moment.
Yeah, both. So on Facebook, make sure the video is something that's gonna make you stop, and because you're obviously scrolling through, right? Whereas YouTube, there's two ways you find it. So it'll get put next to an art, or like it'll get fed in after another video, but more likely is it's going to get found through search. So it needs to be something that's a little bit more searchable in its title. So like if I was going to talk about Facebook, like the content that I might put on Facebook about Facebook is like how to hack your Facebook ads for success. Like, just say that's what it is.
Yeah.
In YouTube, I might say how to generate additional link clicks through Facebook. So YouTube is a little bit more like, if it's being found through search, it's got to be leaned towards like something that people would be actually looking for to solve a problem, or actually searching for in terms of key terms. Whereas Facebook's supposed to like your feed, you're scrolling, oh wow, that's interesting. Because like that's interesting title for Facebook. No one's ever going to search for that. Like how to stay motivated. Well, no one's probably going to search for those words, whereas seven ways that you can improve your life through meditation might be a better title for the same piece of content. So utilize the same content and adjust it if you can for the two platforms. And I would still say both. Yeah.
Yep. There's another one here. How many followers or views do I need if I want to make money from Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and so on? I suppose that's how long is a piece of string, really?
It is. I wouldn't try and monetize it from the feed.
Yeah.
You have to be aiming to be a very, very big, star effectively online to do that. I would rather try and build a core group of fans and get them to buy a product of some sort from you in some way, shape, or form. And then that depends on how much your product is, how much money you need, all those sort of questions. So it's really hard to answer as such. But I wouldn't probably be aiming to monetize in terms of meaningfully living off it. Yeah. Unless you really do want to be a mega star, and you're going to have to put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah. But then again, I suppose if that ever happened, that would just be another source of your income.
Oh, well, there's no harm in getting a little bit of revenue for like YouTube or whatever, right? But not planning on that being everything. So that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just I wouldn't start that way. I wouldn't start with that being the way that you need to get paid.
I definitely don't want that to sort of be your primary goal, your primary driver.
Because you're only going to get a little bit of money per person, right?
Yeah.
You're only going to get a tiny bit of money. Whereas if you can convince someone and they love you, they're more likely to give you 30, 50, $100 than like convincing thousands of people to give you something tiny. Because they're not giving it to YouTube is, and then YouTube really just wants to feed off your brand if you have one. If you have no brand, they've got nothing to feed off anyway, because they just want ad revenue. Yeah. So that's the only way you're making money, is because they're making money. And they're just giving you a piece.
And you need a lot, 1,000 subscribers or something before you can monetize it anyway.
Yeah, before you can even press start. That doesn't mean you get anywhere.
I think I got like, 60 subscribers on it. Like, it's difficult enough to get to 100, man.
No, you gotta work on it.
Exactly. You just gotta keep going.
That's it. Keep going. But that's not, I don't think, like a wise motive for most people as their first plan to monetize that. It's not. It's not how it's going to work for you. Like you're going to get frustrated. It needs to be something that you build over time.
Yep. I think we've run through most of the ones that was, because we did them sort of live as we went through it, the ones that was on the stream here. Let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think we've crossed them. Just want to make sure we don't forget any of them. Then there is, so I suppose the last one that we probably haven't been touching. We did touch on it a little bit, but should you pay someone to run your socials to make sure that they're done right? Or is that again going back to the whole get your information like
the challenge of paying someone, right, is that, and look, we do it, right? So my business does that as one of the services we provide. But if you don't know what you want, again, at the start, then you don't even know how to critique them creating what you want, if you know what I mean. So you need to, in my point of view, have a little bit of information, a little bit of wisdom yourself. It's probably more likely that you're somewhat more established. Like, you wouldn't be just starting and want to spend a lot of money with people. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do that, but it helps when you've got a better understanding of who you are and what you need, and then it's more effective because you'll just get a better result. And by result, I mean return on what you spend, because it can get expensive, and everything is expensive if it's leading nowhere. So whether you pay whether you pay an agency a lot of money or whether you pay a freelancer $5 an hour, but you end up using that freelancer for hundreds of hours, paying them tons of money and they get nowhere, that's potentially more expensive than paying like a big agency a lot of money. So it comes down to, like, it's one of those hard answers or hard questions to answer, but definitely use people. And there's two ways to go about that. Sometimes you might want to use people and only plan to do it for a little while, then just learn from them, then do it yourself. Or you might want to learn and start yourself, and then after a while, like, plan to invest in having people help you. I mean, there's a couple of ways to go about it. And there's no right or wrong answer. It comes down to personal preference, whether you've got someone in the band who's skilled enough to just do it themselves, or whether you share it, or it's just resource management. And if you've got the money to spare to have someone to pay for someone, great. And if your money's better spent somewhere else, then you may choose to do that. And that makes complete sense as well. So it's a tough one to answer as a rule of thumb. It depends on your revenue and everything as well, and where you are. Like, are you a startup or you're an established band that's been going for years? I mean, these are all like valid considerations when making a decision.
Yep. And I suppose, again, like it always good to sort of reach out to your immediate network first and see if there's anyone who wants to help you at, mates rates or help you for free. Yep.
Like there might be someone who just, like, you let into the gig for free and they'll run around and take a whole bunch of content and video and footage and stuff for you on your phone. Cool. That's cost you whatever the door charge was.
Yeah.
Like, that's worth it, as opposed to paying like professionals to do it. We've got good phones. You can give them a camera. Like, there's ways you can go about it. You just have to be smart and leverage what resource you've got.
Yep. Fantastic, man. All right. Well, I suppose really the last question I sort of wanted to finish off on is sort of just based on sort of leading into the outro video I have, which is one of the ones you sent me when we were talking about content. Well, you actually mentioned the whole thing where you can use rev.com to sort of transcribe stuff, which is perfect for podcasts and stuff. But so the question is, I suppose, is how often should you create new content, and what should you create? So we have touched on some of that. But in regards to how you're using it for those small segments, the small Instagram square posts that are 30 seconds long and have subtitles on it, can you just give the insights why that's important?
Why the content looks like that?
Yeah, to have those small, the micro content.
Yeah, so micro content is a good way that you want to invest in people becoming like aware of you, and it's more palatable because it's only a small snippet of content. Whereas, you have to be Joe Rogan for people to go and listen to you for 3 hours. Yeah. if you're not Joe Rogan, then it's unlikely that people are just going to jump in and just give you 3 hours of their time. So the content is meant to be sort of engaging, quick, interesting, give an insight into who you are, what you think and believe, and it's something that if you find it in the feed, you might stop, and it's engaging enough that they'll stop and have a listen and go, oh, that's interesting, and then once they engage on it, maybe you get showing more content, and that's what it's about, because we have to have different like types of content for the different all the different platforms and different lengths, and you got to think about what people are doing. When they're like might be scrolling on Facebook while they're sitting on the toilet, right? So
happens a lot. Guilty.
Exactly. So that might be the right time for something, and whereas a different time, Instagram, usually people are going looking for visual inspiration. Like, it's not necessarily where they scroll, or YouTube, they might be deep, wanting to sort of listen and learn to a long conversation. I mean, these are, as I said, they're all really different types of activities and actions, and you want to create content that makes sense at those different like points in time for people while they're living their life, because people are still living their life. I mean, they're going to invest even a minute in your content, then that's awesome. You know, they've invested a minute in your content. You've done something right to even get their attention, because we've been bombarded with so much information.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
There's anyone out there who can use that little tip? I think that's a good one to finish off on, because that leads us into the outro video here. But Matt, first of all, it's been I suppose not first, second, the last bit. It's been super cool to have you on. I can see there's been quite a few comments about people who really appreciated all the stuff, cool. All the stuff that you've shared. And obviously, if people haven't seen it already, I've actually posted the link to the Facebook planning kit in the comments. What I'll do is I'll do a separate post on the page as well, so people can come back to it, and we can link back to the show as well. Hey,
awesome! That's awesome.
But yeah, if you just before we wrap up, if you just want to name drop your socials again, where people should go and follow you.
Yeah, definitely. So my socials are at Matt J Hanham, MATTJHANHAM. So that's all my socials, but also you can check out my website as well, which might be just an easy place to land if you want to do that. And then obviously my business, which is Visible. So where our socials are all at Team Visible, TEAMVISIBLE, and visible.com.au is our website. And there's a bit of stuff around. If you at least start to engage in some of our content, where we put out regular new, emails and quite a bit of content around the place, a lot of blogs. There's a lot you can learn in some of those blogs, and also we have quite a few tools on and around the website and things that you can download and just utilize for free, as well as some courses and bits and pieces that we're developing a lot more of at the moment, just to help people if they want to have a go themselves. So yeah, we're here for that, and also here for other services and things too, if people do want to go down that path. But yeah, that's up to them. People will choose like what path they need and whether they're ready for, engaging and sort of going down that path a lot further for their band, and it'll work for some and not for others. So yeah, if any of that makes sense, go for gold. And yeah, thanks, Steph. This has been my longest individual podcast. I think so far. I don't think I've pushed 2 hours before, but we're at 2.5. So
oh wow, I did nearly 4 hours about a week ago.
No, usually I'm on the timer, cutting them off a bit over an hour, and I think, but this is it's been cool to do a long one. I should have probably bought some lunch with me.
Wicked.
But no, I've really enjoyed having the chat, and it's loving the context of the band thing, because it's not something that I get to talk to very often, but it's so true. There's just so many similarities, and it's just been really cool to have this chat and in that context, and hopefully I've been able to help someone just think about something a little differently. And if I have, then that's awesome. Yeah.
Like I said, the biggest sort of reward for me is to see that you hopefully can help some of these bands that have, I've come across some ridiculous talent. We have some, these songs need to be out there, man. You know what I mean?
I'm sure. Look, I like it, and that's often the case, right? There's this amazing talent that just, if they could develop a little bit more sort of commerciality in their approach, then maybe a lot more people could hear it. It'd be amazing, because, it doesn't have to happen. It's not necessarily going to happen naturally. You have to give it a bit of a nudge.
Yes.
To put some effort in. So, because it might be amazing, but if no one hears it, was it ever really amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just, hopefully this has inspired a couple of people to just give it a bit more, just a bit more effort if that's what they want. Yeah.
Well, certainly, I'm sure it's certainly giving a lot of people a lot of ideas for some extra framework.
Yeah, for sure.
Set up a vision and a mission.
That's true. I can probably help there as well. I mean, even if you want to comment, on this post I've got, it's not something that you can download easily, but it is. But it's not on an address. If you want to put in vision, or vision mission in the comments under this post, I'll get you a copy of a workbook which you can use to help map out your vision and mission. I've got something lying around which I can dig out and dust off and put out there for people. So if you let me know, I can message it to you, message it back to you.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Steph.
Go and get some lunch.
Yeah, for sure. I will.
All right. Thanks, buddy.